No, Saturday, unfortunately. My wife and I are enjoying the last few days of freedom.
Good evening. This is the Ridgewood Village Council Public Workshop. The date is August 7th, 2024. The time is 7:33. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin. Here. Councilmember Reynolds.
Here.
Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
Mayor Vagianos.
Here, will you all please join us in a salute to our flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And tonight we're going to begin our meeting with a very special presentation for the Ridgewood 4th of July Committee. The council will all go into the well. Can we please ask Lee Gilsenan Saltiel, Tara Masterson, Skylar Saltiel, Chris Ramondi, Mike Jenke, and Jeff Zimmerman to join us.
So we good? Is this working? So I have the privilege, amongst many privileges on this council, of being liaison to the 4th of July Committee. So I get a first-hand and a first-row seat to the amazing work that so many volunteers do. And I know we don't have a lot of folks here tonight, but we've got some really important ones. If all of you saw the amount of time, energy, and planning that goes into putting on what I think we all agree is one of the staples of Ridgewood life, you'd be absolutely amazed and just share, I think, in the gratitude I think that we all owe these people for the amazing job that they do. With that, the least we can do is formally recognize that amazing work that you all do. So we do have a proclamation that we're going to be issuing tonight, and I'm going to read it. It's a little long, but it's worth listening to. So, whereas the annual observance of Independence Day in the village of Ridgewood has been celebrated for 114 years, which provides Ridgewood residents, as well as people from surrounding towns, a day filled with patriotic events such as the memorable flag-raising ceremony, the parade filled with music and floats from all of the elementary schools, and the unforgettable fireworks display. And whereas the Ridgewood 4th of July Celebration Committee, Incorporated, which was formed in 1910 as the Ridgewood Independent Day Association, is not a Ridgewood committee, but rather a nonprofit organization which fundraises, obtains sponsors, hires marching bands, entertainers, food vendors, and a fireworks company in order to provide an extraordinary experience for all who attend. And whereas many village departments assist the Ridgewood 4th of July Celebration Committee by cleaning the streets for the parade, putting up fencing, trimming trees, providing police, fire, and EMS services for safety and security, providing inspection services for food vendors, putting up patriotic bunting at Village Hall, and setting up and taking down the parade reviewing stand. And whereas lifelong friends Lee Gilsenan Saltiel and Tara Masterson both grew up in Ridgewood and always loved the 4th of July, as they created a deep pride in Ridgewood as a community and a desire to run the Ridgewood 4th of July Celebration Committee when they were older. And whereas Lee Gilsenan Saltiel and Tara Masterson have been involved with the Ridgewood 4th of July Celebration Committee for the past 12 years, becoming more involved over those years and trading places in the president and vice president roles. This year, Tara serves as president, Krista Ramundi serves as vice president, Skylar Saltiel serves as treasurer, Lee Gilsenan Saltiel serves as secretary, and many other volunteer members serve with the committee throughout the day. And whereas the kickoff, the parade, is Tara's favorite part of the day, as all the kids and families enjoy the parade, and Lee's favorite part of the day is when the first fireworks are set off. And whereas both residents and former residents come home to Ridgewood to celebrate Independence Day, and every person, family, or group have their own traditions on the day, which incorporates the flag-raising ceremony, the parade, and the fireworks. And whereas both Lee and Tara want to preserve and protect the traditions of the 4th of July in Ridgewood, which has withstood wars, depression, political upheavals, and pandemics. Oh wait, come on in, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I'm almost done, perfect timing. Ladies and gentlemen. All right, so now be it resolved that the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood wishes to recognize, praise, and thank all of the volunteer members of the Ridgewood 4th of July Celebration Committee and the co-chairs of the committee, Lee Gilsenan Saltiel and Tara Masterson, for preserving and continuing the traditions of Ridgewood on behalf of a grateful community. Guys, thank you all so very much. With a shirt. That's awesome. You guys.
Yeah, that's always fun stuff. So, and now we will go to the report on the Shedler property testing. We have representatives from Matrix, the environmental consulting firm that we have hired. If you guys will please come up and join us.
So, Mayor, if I may, I just want to formally introduce Melissa Fury. She is a project manager and a senior environmental specialist with Matrix New World Engineering, and Chris Pittarisi. He is a senior project manager and was also the licensed site remediation professional who's been assigned to this project from Matrix as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Melissa to make introductions and talk about the second level testing that was done over at the Shedler property at the request of the NJDEP.
Make sure your green lights are on.
Green light is on. You can hear me?
Yep, and you just have to, just as you're doing,
Speak into the mic.
Close to the mic.
Yes. Okay, so when we left off, we were going to be carrying out the sampling in the balance of the property at Shedler. We had sampled the berm. We went back and we sampled the balance of the property with the exception of the landscaped area around the actual house per the DEP's requirements. We went out there, Tom Farrell, a representative from the DEP, the Bureau of Solid Waste, accompanied us there while we were doing our soil sampling event, and he directed us within each grid cell to locations where he identified observed fill, which is the location that we ended up collecting our sample within each cell. So our samples were collected from 1 to 1.5 feet below the ground surface within the grid. So our results indicated that we had similar compounds exceeding the NJDEP standards that we identified in the berm. Those compounds were benzoate anthracene, benzoate pyrene, and mercury. We found those compounds in 8 of the 28 grid samples that we collected. And those are our results so far that we've got.
Great, thank you very much. So you found, of the 28 samples, there were 8 that had exceedances.
Correct.
And what is the next step in addressing those eight grid locations?
We are going to delineate those 8 locations as a way to decrease the potential amount of volume that is going to need to be removed. I'll let Chris expand upon the recommendations that we're gonna provide for you guys.
So basically, we're going to collect some additional samples around each of those samples.
Chris, if you could speak into the mic.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a little awkward, but this way everyone can hear you.
We're going to collect some additional samples around the existing samples where we had exceedances, essentially do kind of like a bullseye pattern around each sample with samples kind of an inner ring and an outer ring. We'll analyze the inner ring first. If they're clean, then we've delineated the extent of it. If the inner ones are still impacted, then we analyze the outer ring. The idea is to, as Melissa said, kind of refine the area that needs to be treated.
So you're gonna keep sampling around each of those 8 areas in a larger and larger radius until you have clean samples. Is that accurate?
Correct.
And then what happens?
Then we've defined the area that needs to be remediated, which in this case is going to be removal of that soil.
So the plan would be to remove soil around those 8 grid sample areas, correct?
Correct.
And that's the extent of the work that would need to be done on the balance of the property. And are these the same types of contaminants that were found in the berm?
Yes.
And so, and again, I know you don't know for a fact, but would you imagine that all of this came about at the same time?
Yes, that would make sense.
Okay. And what about the berm? I know that there were, was it 7 of 14
Correct.
samples, and they were kind of spread out, correct?
Correct.
What is your recommendation for remediation of the berm?
We recommend that you remove the berm.
Got it. And do you, when would you begin so there's no additional testing necessary on the berm?
Correct.
When would you anticipate beginning testing of those 8, or continuing testing of those 8 sample areas?
Once we get the approval from you guys to go ahead and get that done, we can start scheduling our.
So through you, Mayor, along those lines, I had a conversation with Melissa about this earlier today. What I would like to do is, once the council has heard all of the presentation tonight, I'd like the village council to consider, based on a proposal that will be forthcoming, which I assume will have a not to exceed amount to do this testing that Chris has described tonight. I'd like authorization to add a resolution to next week's council meeting, because if we don't authorize this now, we won't have another opportunity to do so until after Labor Day. And I think based on what we're hearing tonight and the conversations I've had with Melissa earlier today, I think there should be an urgency attached to this to try to get this further testing done as soon as possible.
Where would the money come from?
From the $350,000 bond that the council approved for this purpose.
So we wouldn't exceed that.
My preliminary conversations with Melissa is no. I think we have plenty of funding still available there to do that. And then I think we're going to have a greater conversation once we talk about remediation, which may include removing soil from the property.
And I just have one more question before I open it up to the council. What is your projected timeline for completing the testing of those 8 areas?
So from the date that we
From when
go
you
out there
begin?
and sample?
So assume for just a moment that this gets approved next Wednesday, then you would begin about when, and when would you be done, do you think?
We would like to begin a week or two after it's been approved. It's just scheduling
Okay.
our field staff to go do it. And then the samples would be on a standard turnaround time with our laboratory that we use, which is 1 to 2 weeks from then. So that's when we would start getting results.
So what would you say we would have a report within a month or so after you begin?
Yeah, about a month.
Great, thank you. And I'll turn it
Melissa,
over-
you feel you'll be able to be on-site doing the testing before the end of the month if the council were to authorize it next Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And now I'll open it up to the council. I'll open it up to the council for questions.
I just have a question about the 8. Are the 8 adjacent to each other? Are they a cluster? Are they throughout the 28?
They're throughout the 28 locations.
Okay.
28.
Yeah. I'm sort of hoping.
So is it possible, if they're throughout the 28, when you're sampling and you're going further out and further out, is it possible you're going to find other areas that you didn't like if you tested in the middle of one grid and a second grid next to it was positive, as you're going further out on the positive grid, could you hit something in the negative grid that is now positive? Because you only tested like, when you test, how big of an area do you test, I guess?
Well, our delineation samples would probably be 5 feet step outs. So we'd go, so the soil boring is about a 2-inch hole into the ground, and we would do a 5-foot step out in 4 directions. And we would do a 5-foot each time. So that would determine our bullseye.
But if the original soil boring, everything is fine, but in the next grid, as you're going out in those 5-foot sections, if you overlap on that grid that was negative and then something becomes positive, is that possible that something
Well, we
be-
would use the clean location as a delineation point too, because they were all collected at the same exact interval. So we could use that clean location as the delineation, the furthest delineation point from that hot spot.
How does something like this happen? It's so weird that it seems random. Like, why is one grid positive? You know, it's a good question that Siobhan asked. I would have thought they would have been localized. Like, it makes me nervous that they weren't.
Why not contiguous?
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't there when the soil was deposited there, but it could come from trucks, carrying fill that they had just imported, stuff like that, moving along the site.
Let me just jump in for a second. I have been told by Mr. Rudishauser that when the soil was brought in, that it was staged on the property, and that from that staging area, the soil was then moved to build the berm. So that would mean that this soil was in a big area over the course of the property. And I don't know, but in the same way that you found many clean samples in the berm, it's kind of similar that you found many clean samples in the grid. Does that sound like it makes sense? And again, I'm asking, I'm not telling.
Yeah, well, we also, our samples were biased also to the obvious observed fill material, so we weren't collecting just random locations. In the report, we have a figure, and you'll see the actual locations of the samples, and they're not dead center in the grid. They're literally, the grid was just a 10,000 square foot location that we needed to be within. So our samples are not necessarily representative of just the center of that location.
Other questions?
So from a remediation standpoint, as we stand tonight, we are likely going to have to remove the berm. That's your recommendation. With regard to the level area of the property, if these testing results stand and these exceedances remain where they are tonight, we're likely going to have to remove soil from the balance of the property as well. How deep would you anticipate we'll have to go to remove what is there that's in exceedance on the level piece of the property?
So when we come out to do the delineation sampling, we'll take some vertical samples as well to define that area. I would
Okay.
expect it probably a couple of feet. I don't expect it to be terribly deep,
Okay.
but we do need to confirm that with the sampling. that
So
we're
the next round of testing will determine the depth?
doing. Correct.
Okay.
And it may vary, the depth may be a little different depending on the area of the site that we're excavating. It's going to, each grid that we've got to hit on, we're going to have to do a vertical sample to determine the depth of that grid.
So Mayor, from an administrative standpoint, and I've had this conversation with Melissa earlier today, what I've asked Matrix to do next is, at least on the berm area, to start to solicit quotes and estimates from contractors who are licensed by the state of New Jersey to go on property, to remove the identified soil, and then dispose of it at an appropriate location. Once I have an estimate, and it may just be for the berm, understanding that that estimate may change depending on the delineation samples in the next round of testing, it's my intention on behalf of the village to file an insurance claim with our environmental joint insurance fund. I've already had conversations with our risk manager, in addition to the executive director of the Bergen GIF, Dave Grubb, who is actually a former village council member here in Ridgewood, so he's familiar with Ridgewood and familiar with the property. And we're going to actively pursue an insurance claim. We don't know what those costs are as of today, but we are certainly going to try to recover as much as we can by filing the claim with the environmental branch of the Joint Insurance Fund.
Pam, I know you had some questions? No?
Well, I was just wondering how this affects, if at all, the archaeological study.
So in fact, it doesn't. And
Okay.
Melissa and I, before I was on vacation, had a conference call with Paul McKeon, who's our representative from Richard Grubb Associates, who's done all of our archaeological work. There is a proposal for the archaeological phase 2 on tonight's agenda for discussion purposes. And Melissa has given Paul advice. Essentially, the advice was to double glove their employees when they're out performing the archaeological study. But according to Melissa and Paul, there should be no impediment for them to go out there and perform the phase 2 archaeological, even while we're dealing with these soil issues.
Anybody else? Do you have anything to add?
Nope.
Thank you both so much for your time and for your expertise. We really appreciate it.
Okay, and Melissa, I'll have a not to exceed amount with an abbreviated scope of work to share with the council next week.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And with that, we will go to public comment. Kim, I don't think your mic is on. There's a little button at the base that's got, it'll
we
be a
go.
green light when it's on.
Are we good now?
Perfect.
Okay. I am coming to the Village Council tonight not only as a resident of Clinton Avenue and a parent of a child who has walked safely to and from Ridge School for the past 6 years, but as an
And excuse
elementary
me,
school teacher.
Kim, could you give us your address, please?
Sure, 51 Clinton Avenue.
Thank you.
But I'm an elementary school teacher with 25 years of firsthand experience supervising bus duty in both the morning and the afternoon each day. I urge the council to keep Clinton Avenue closed each morning and afternoon for the safety of all Ridge students. If the street is open to traffic, I fear that it's going to become the second red zone for Ridge School, which is going to be a major safety issue for the kids walking on our street to school. I see it every single morning. There are 7 adults in my school and my principal on bus duty. We have the occasional police officer that's there. Parents simply do not care, and they do what suits them, and they want to get their kids out of their car as fast as possible. Some follow the rules, some don't. Every day there's a near miss of an accident. These kids are going to be on Clinton Avenue unsupervised each day, getting in and out of cars. It's really a true fear of mine that someone is going to be hurt. So, in my opinion, an argument simply cannot be made that the street will be safer if it's open as opposed to closed. The DOT just ruled that that the present street closure is legal. So for 50 years, our street has been closed. The kids have walked safely to and from school. Please keep that going for the next 50 and 100 years to keep all of our kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Hello, Mayor. Anne Marie Agnello, 31 Clinton Avenue. I have some questions about the proposed amendment to, for Clinton Avenue with respect to it stating that to establish no stopping or standing on both sides of the entire length of Clinton Avenue from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. and from 2:30 to 3:30 p.m. And I'm sure you put that in because you were concerned about kids jumping, parents stopping, kids getting out of the car to get onto the sidewalk. And so I think there's a lot of, I have a lot of concerns because there's going to be a lot of traffic now diverted from West Ridgewood Avenue to Clinton with kids being dropped off. There's going to be, during those school hours, the morning and the afternoon, there's going to be probably a real line of traffic. No matter which side the cars come up, they're going to have to stop at the stop signs at the end of each. What's that going to result in? It's going to be an opportunity of how's that's going to be interpreted when you have to stop for the stop sign, you tell your kid, jump out now. And then because the cars start backing up because there's going to be a big flow, I will anticipate that there's going to be a big flow and cars are actually going to be stopping because they're going to have to stop because they're probably going to get backlogged whether they're turning onto Godwin or onto West Ridgewood, from Clinton. So I think that this is going to be a real concern for how are the police going to determine who's breaking the law here, because it's, because you can bet that there's going to be a lot of traffic on the road, so that's not going to help the safety of the children. We saw a video in one of the work sessions that one of the parents that Dana did, showing what happens at the Ridgewood High School, where, on Brookside, where the cars are, as they're going to, turn to go to East Ridgewood Avenue, in front of the high school, they stop, the kids get out, and those are high school kids. We saw that video, and that's pretty startling. I mean, those are high school kids, and the cars keep stopping, because it causes a whole flow. So I don't know what that is going to accomplish, because it's going to really, you can just imagine, it's going to be a real problem, and children are going to get hurt. And these are little kids, so these are elementary school kids with different skills. So that's going to happen. So I really think that, to keep it closed. Now
Could
we
you
have
just
the
speak into the
sidewalk.
microphone, please?
I have 1 minute.
It's very hard to hear you.
If you
Oh.
could, yeah, it's a
Oh, you
little
couldn't hear
awkward. You have
me?
to really be close to the microphone.
Oh, couldn't hear anything?
Much
I'm
better.
sorry.
It's okay.
So I'm concerned that, that we have the ordinance that apparently that it was approved by the state or for traffic, that we could keep they have the sidewalk, we still keep the road closed during those two times, and this way the children will be safe. Those who want to walk to school will have the sidewalk to walk to school, but you don't have through traffic. So I think that's, I agree, that would be the safest thing. I just think that this is going to be real problematic, the more I thought about it.
Thank you, Anne Marie.
Okay, so thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. So I just wanted to address a few points related to the presentation from Matrix, and I see that they're gone, so obviously it's not an opportunity to ask questions, but what comes to mind is the groundwater and the protection of the private wells for the people that live near the Shedler property, which you're all aware of. So I looked at the actual documentation that relates to the mandate for disposal of solid waste material, and it says that disposal means storage, treatment, utilization, processing, or final disposition of solid waste, specifically included the discharge, deposit, injection, dumping, spilling, leaking, or placing of any solid waste or hazardous waste into and on any land or water so that such solid waste material and hazardous waste, and I'm assuming contaminants, it doesn't say that, or any constituent thereof may enter the environment or be admitted into the air or discharged into any waters, including groundwaters. So while I haven't had a proper opportunity to look at all of this information, I'm going to make an assumption, and I'd like a confirmation at some point from somebody, that there will be testing of maybe the groundwaters on that property. I don't know if that's available, I don't know if that's possible, I don't know if that's part of a remediation plan, but I think in fairness to people that are living in that area, and the fact that the dumping of contaminated soil was not our fault, we should have some kind of protection or, feel confident that everything was done to ensure that, as Sean LaTourette said, water quality is, a limited resource and a precious natural resource, and that we should all be entitled to clean and safe drinking water. So that's what I would ask. If that's not possible, then we'll have to look at other methodologies to ensure that we, as residents, are safe. Again, we had nothing to do with this dumping, whether it was legal or illegal. But I want to, ensure that we are protected and our families are protected in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Good evening. Elaine Divoblis Liebenson, 41 Clinton Avenue, back to Clinton. The current Clinton Avenue ordinance must remain in place. As a public safety measure, it is a resounding success. Generations of Ridge students have walked to school on Clinton Avenue without a single incident. We are unified as a street in keeping this in place as a safety measure. There's no reason to repeal the ordinance. Last year, for the first time ever, the RPD publicly declared it illegal and stopped enforcing it. Lack of enforcement led to an uptick in traffic and a call for safety measures. Concluding you had no choice, because of the declared illegality, you authorized $600,000 in taxpayer money for the construction of a single sidewalk on the west side of the street. In fact, the ordinance is legal, as confirmed by the Department of Transportation. The village took the novel position last year that the DOT approval was required for a decades-old ordinance. Not true. The DOT confirmed that Clinton Avenue is a local street, not within its jurisdiction. In addition, there is a New Jersey state statute that directly authorizes the ordinance, as cited by the commissioner himself. NJSA Section 4067-16.7 was enacted nearly 60 years ago to the day and provides for closure to through traffic for 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon for safe ingress and egress to school. Municipalities all over the state have similar ordinances in place to keep kids safe. The village denied the statute supported the Clinton ordinance. Again, not true. The DOT commissioner and his staff confirmed that the Clinton Avenue ordinance falls squarely under the state statute. It's permissible and it's legal. The sidewalk is all but finished. You win. You got it. Please stop calling the ordinance illegal. I'm told the village is now worried about a theoretical lawsuit by a non-resident of Clinton Avenue who may claim discrimination. No such case has ever been asserted because no such cause of action exists. However, the village has in fact been sued over Clinton Avenue. As you know, last week, my family, with no choice left, filed a civil rights lawsuit under the Americans with Disabilities Act on behalf of my autistic adult son, Daniel. No one here seems to be concerned about that very real pending lawsuit and my son. What gives? The east side of Clinton Avenue, where we live, has no pedestrian access. Traffic will flow against a curb. We have pleaded for the ordinance to remain in place, and I'm here again pleading so that Daniel has safe access to walk to the village and public transportation without contending with school traffic. We moved to Clinton for a reason. You need to respect that. Residents in this village move where they do for a reason. This free and entirely reasonable accommodation is instead of another $600,000 sidewalk on the east side of Clinton, which is a taxpayer I can't ask for. I haven't demanded it. The judge ordered us to settle. She ordered us to get together and talk, yet you put this item on the agenda knowing this Clinton Avenue ordinance is one of our requests for reasonable accommodation. Why? Why did you do that? Keep the ordinance in place. It's an easy, sensible solution, and it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. Excuse me, Elaine, sorry. I said Christine and Lorraine. Sorry about that. I apologize.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with temperatures down, no water in the parking lot, all good. But I came to talk about trees, and I would just,
please.
oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you where I live, right?
And you didn't give us your name.
Oh,
We know
I
your
didn't tell
name,
you that
but
either.
everyone else does not.
Okay, Nancy Brennan Hill, 136 Doremus Avenue. So
Thank you.
I came to talk about the temperature and trees. And if you all think that it's getting hotter and that the heat waves are lasting longer, you're correct. There was an article in the New York Times a week or so ago attesting to that fact. And it seems like the northeastern part of this country is getting hotter faster than the rest of the country. And New Jersey is number 3 in getting how fast it's getting hot compared to all the other states. So we really need to do something about this. And one of the simplest things to do is to plant trees. So we need enough money in the budget to plant street trees, more than we've ever planted would be to my liking. Another interesting thing that was pointed out in the article was people were saying, well, why is New Jersey heating up faster than all of the other states in the Northeast? And the reason is because of hot spots. And that just means asphalt, buildings, spots where there aren't trees, spots that generate a lot of heat. So I'm very happy that I see an article or an agenda item where you're going to talk about putting trees in the parking lot on Cottage Place. So that's just a really wonderful start. I'm so excited that Ridgewood is so forward-thinking to start looking at parking lots as something that can be done to start reducing, these absolutely terrible temperatures. There's lots of other things we can do. We can start encouraging people to look at their lawn and assess whether they want to plant their own trees. We can start some projects. We can identify streets via the street inventory where it's impossible for the village to plant more trees as we lose them because the curb is too narrow to support these big shade trees. So we really need to get everybody involved in this. The village, the private citizens, and people are willing. And the evidence for that, I think, is the Adopt a Sapling. Last year, we got about 30 people to agree to plant trees. This year, we're going to get 90. And we're still looking for tree captains, people who will go around the night before the big planting to drop off the trees in the right site. So if you've got a big SUV or a truck, even better, and you'd like to be a tree captain, get in touch with the parks people. They'll be delighted to sign you up. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy. Anybody else from the audience present? Then we will go to our hybrid access audience. Dana, you're up.
Okay, Dana Glazer, 61 Clinton Avenue. And, okay, so I think I can speak for everybody on our street that safety is the most important thing. And we're very shaken about this idea of repealing this ordinance that has been in place and created a safe environment for the last 70 years. As Elaine and other people have mentioned, the Department of Transportation weighed in that the current ordinance is permitted and valid. I don't understand why the Village of Ridgewood never reached out to them. I would love for you to answer that to me. I also don't understand why the Village Council attorney weighed in about this ordinance that's in place without speaking to the Department of Transportation. This is an ordinance that worked, and to get rid of it will make our street less safe. And the idea of having some sort of a no stopping, no parking policy as a Band-Aid in place of this is flawed, because kids are young, they're gonna run in and out of the cars, the parents are gonna stop quickly to get their kids off, they're not gonna pay attention, and they're not gonna obey this. Having the street closed creates more of a safe environment, and that's the most important issue here. And what we don't want to see is something like what happens on Broadside Avenue every morning in front of the high school, where you have K-turns and kids walking in between cars, and Clinton Avenue is much narrower than that. So it's going to be dangerous. You also have at the top of the street, you have at South Murray, kids coming from South Murray, kids walking across the top of Clinton Avenue. And I have not heard how this is addressed whatsoever in terms of the safety of those children if you eliminate this ordinance. Are you going to have a crossing guard there? What are you going to do about that? We also have families with handicapped members. And I don't understand why this hasn't been addressed with the planning before construction began. Why wasn't there some ADA compliance? Why wasn't that addressed? So this is very upsetting to me because you're making a street that has had a perfect record for the last 70 years into a much more potentially dangerous street. And while we're all, on board now, of course, with the idea of having sidewalks, we have no problem with sidewalks. This is a dangerous situation that you're creating. And I just don't understand why you haven't waited, to wait for the Attorney General to pass down a decision. This should have happened before there was any change up to our street, not now. So this doesn't make any sense to me. And you are creating a street that is potentially dangerous. And that is a very concerning thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana. Susan, you're up.
Hello, hi. Susan Rowan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. Hi, I'm calling in regard to a few things. First, the soil contamination. I listened to the speakers earlier, and and I have questions in regard to it. I heard that they left, that they said that there were 8 areas that were above the level that was acceptable. And I wondered how many areas were close to being above. And should residents get can residents have access to see how many areas were the levels at each area? Because, if the levels got an F and some levels got a D-, that's still high. So that was, my question in regards to that. The next is, and I know this is going to be a sore subject, is the footbridge. I wish that the level of dedication for the footbridge fixing, and I know it was the vendor not submitting the right paperwork or incomplete paperwork was the cause last time, but if the same level of dedication was given to the burn removal. I just heard, get these estimates in as soon as possible so we could tackle this as soon as possible. Why couldn't that be done for the footbridge? And it is a sore subject, but it's been going on 4 years of closure. And that dedication should have came from the village engineer. Okay, the next item is the West Saddle River. It's the beginning of August, and we have not heard to when that road is going to be repaved. We've been promised repeatedly regarding it, but no notification as of yet has been sent out regarding the repavement. And then finally, and this is just another topic of sensitivity, is the flooding. I believe that we are in hurricane season, and there should be, I know Keith has been very responsive to my emails, but I do believe that there should be some sort of notification to residents, and I know he sent one out yesterday, which was great. But, you know, many residents are away. They're not knowing what's happening home because, you know, when you're on vacation, you're not really paying attention. And by getting the notices probably a little bit earlier or something, it does help them prepare accordingly. And hopefully it's not a very busy hurricane season, and hopefully we do dodge bullets for this until the Army Corps of Engineers puts in better safeguards. But, you know, unfortunately, you know, it is the nature of the beast of sorts that this is something that people have to deal with, and the more preparation they have, the better. And that was pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Jacqueline, you're up.
Jacqueline Hone, 30 Carriage Lane. I'm really disturbed by the Matrix report and what was just said. I'm very concerned about removing the berm. Will the berm, will it be removed in sections and replaced immediately for safety? Because I'm very concerned that the berm is going to be removed in its entirety and left the park completely exposed. As told in the past on record by village police and engineer, a massive berm was the only thing that can safely protect the public. As seen with the recent fatal explosion on Route 3, a wall or anything less than a berm will not protect residents. So how will that be done? I'm hoping in sections and that the berm is replaced immediately. There was also mentioning of double glove for the workers on the archaeological project. Well, what about the public? Will the Village of Ridgewood finally erect signs warning the public that the site is contaminated, both the berm and the land? Will the Matrix report and findings be made public and posted to the village website? I think that's the right thing to do. Speaking of right things to do, and speaking of New Jersey heating up hotspots like Route 17 Shedler, your green movement and preservation efforts on the west side of Ridgewood are a stark contradiction to what is actually happening on the east side at Shedler. The current plan is to decimate the entire wooded area to turn it into a plastic artificial turf field. Why is the east side treated so differently than the west side? And why is your green movement very different on one side than it is on another? We need more trees and we need more plants on one side, but yet you're not applying that same concept to protect the residents from issues that you already know. And I don't understand anymore how I can come up here and say these things, as other people have as well, for months, over a year, and we don't get answers. We get thank you with a name. Hopefully this time you'll get it correct. It's Jacqueline Hone. Paul Vaggiano's mayor always responds back with a simple thank you and doesn't address these questions. Can you please address these questions and answer us? Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Anybody else? With that, I'm going to close public comment. Does anybody wish to respond to any
I do, Mayor.
questioners?
First of all, with regard to Clinton Avenue, procedurally, I think it's important that everyone be aware that what is being proposed during the special public meeting tonight is simply the introduction of two ordinances. One, to rescind the ordinance that would close Clinton Avenue during the school days, and the other to establish parking regulations that mirror the parking regulations that exist throughout the village near other elementary schools. And those regulations that are being proposed tonight will mirror what exists around all the other elementary schools. This is just an introduction. Ordinances that are adopted by the village council need to be heard at 2 public meetings. Tonight would only be the first. Simultaneous to that, Chief Lyons from the Ridgewood Police Department has written to the Attorney General's office asking for a specific written opinion on the legalities of closing Clinton Avenue during the school days. Unfortunately, and this happens all too often when it comes to state government, two government agencies, the Department of Transportation and the Attorney General's office, are contradicting themselves on the legality of closing Clinton Avenue. Police departments throughout the state of New Jersey a number of years ago were provided written guidance based off of street closures in other municipalities. I believe there were 3 in Bergen County that prompted this directive to all police chiefs throughout the state that the restriction and the closing of the road and limiting it to 2 different classes of individuals, those who are members of the public who want to transcend that road versus residents, landscapers, delivery people, and things of that nature, that was not permissible for a police department to do or for a government agency to adopt an ordinance that allowed 2 different classes of people to access a street when it's closed. So we are seeking that guidance as we speak. We have even pressed the state to expedite any type of guidance that they can give us, and we're asking for that guidance in writing so that we will have that information to provide to council before they are asked to consider the ordinance on second reading in September. So I don't want anyone to think that we're rushing into anything here. We understand the concerns of the residents. There is ongoing litigation that was mentioned by one of the speakers at the public comment period. We're working through that with our legal counsel as well. But we have to understand a few things here. One, we have sidewalks that are being completed, and I do want to correct the amount of money because I've had a number of residents reach out to me since the start of the Clinton Avenue sidewalk project. This is not a $600,000 project. All of our sidewalk projects that engineering are currently endeavoring to build, the price tag is $600,000. The price tag specifically for Clinton Avenue is about $230,000. So I just want to settle that piece of information because if you're driving down Clinton Avenue and you're thinking about the village spending $600,000, it seems like an awful lot of money because it is. This is multiple sidewalk projects that amount to $600,000. But we have sidewalks that are being built, and we have school opening in less than a month. And the police department needs to be in a position to make sure that we have clear direction for the parents who are going to be dropping off their children at Ridge School as to what the rules are going to be when school opens up the day after Labor Day, which is why this is being listed for council consideration tonight, with a lot of further discussion to happen before school opens once we have clear direction from the Attorney General's office. So I hope that clears up some of the misconceptions that are out there about why we're doing this, but we really need that answer from the Attorney General's office in order to move forward properly. With regard to the groundwater concerns to Ms. O'Keefe, I think honestly, and Mr. Calby, the Director of Ridgewood Water, is here with us tonight. I think the quickest way is that if you or your neighbors have any well testing results that have been conducted recently, and that could be shared with Mr. Calby, that may be a proactive first step in determining whether or not there are any concerns relative to what we heard from Matrix tonight. But I will commit to you that I will go back to Matrix in the next few days and determine whether or not there is any further testing that they recommend to address your concerns. We will undertake that. With regard to Susan's comments, first, the report from Matrix, once I have the final draft, which I expect to have tomorrow, what was provided to council tonight was in fact a draft. That will all be posted on the village website as soon as it is received. I can tell you, Susan, that the standards that the DEP uses with regard to the exceedances is a very, very, very conservative standard. So while I can understand why you'd ask about the testing results that may just be under the exceedance level, I can also tell you that they are very conservative standards that Matrix needed to use when evaluating this soil. With regard to West Saddle River Road, we have not commenced any of our village paving program as of yet. Our contractor is still in the process of doing concrete work throughout the village, whether it be curbs and or sidewalks. Had a conversation with Mr. Rudishauser just this afternoon about the paving of West Saddle River Road, and based on the way that neighborhood is laid out and the fact that that roadway is the only way in or out of that neighborhood, we are going to do everything we can to provide at least 2 weeks' notice that it's coming, and then notice a day or two before of the exact date and time when West Saddle River Road will be paved. With regard to the Kingsbridge pedestrian bridge, Chris has gone back to our design engineer. They are going back and forth on some possible changes to the bid specifications. As you know, we had 3 bidders. Only 1 came in under budget. So they're doing their due diligence in reviewing that before we go back out to bid. But I expect in the next month or so, we will be back out on the street soliciting bids to undertake that project. And with regard to flooding, we did send out a communication last night in conjunction with OEM. Just so you understand our process in the manager's office, if there is a heavy rainstorm or a more serious hurricane, tropical storm type of event that's imminent, we do confer with OEM and engineering so that we can put those protocols into place. I will only put out a notification if OEM advises me to do so, and obviously Jeremy Kleiman is in constant contact with Bergen County OEM, making those decisions before we put out any type of communications to the public. And to Ms. Hone, again, the report will be placed on the village website as soon as it's received in totality tomorrow. The proposal that we will be soliciting from the remediation contractor will be to remove the entire berm. The balance of the property, as was said tonight, is still in question as to what will need to be removed there. But we do anticipate that Matrix is going to recommend and that the DEP is going to confirm the need to remove the entire berm. That's going to be a DEP requirement. Any type of signage that will need to be posted there, we will obviously follow all the DEP requirements and regulations as to that. And I think that's all I had. I don't know if, Mayor, if anyone else has anything to say.
Yep.
Sure.
Sean?
I just want to address, you want to go first, Matt?
I'll just be really quick.
Go.
You know, while the manager has acknowledged that there is litigation going on with regard to Clinton Avenue, it's been a long-standing practice of this council for years, not only this one, but all the predecessor councils, that we don't comment on the litigation during the course of the public meetings, and that is something that we keep confidential in terms of our own discussions. So I just ask the council members to make sure that they refrain from, commenting or putting anything on the record about the litigation itself.
Mayor, I did have one other thing. With regard to Jacqueline Hone's comments, with regard to tree planting on the east side, I will tell you that there is a letter going out from my office in the next few weeks through Nancy Bigos and her team in the Parks Division. They have identified 65 potential planting locations in the Shedler neighborhood for street trees, which would be afforded to the 2024 capital budget. We will be sending out a letter that will include a QR code. Any residents who receive that letter because their property has been identified as a safe planting zone will be able to be directed to a Google form online to request a tree should they want one planted in front of their property. So similar to the efforts that the Shade Tree Commission has taken on the west side, we'll be doing that in the Shedler neighborhood, and residents should be receiving those letters in the next few weeks.
Stole my thunder, but because Nancy's here, I just wanted to address that as well. We're very sensitive. When Evan and I took our seats, 3.5 acres of Shedler had already been cleared, and we're sensitive to that area. Just to give you a scope, there's 212 shade trees in our budget. So 212 for the whole entire town, 65 of which are allocated to the east side of Route 17, Shedler, Salem Ridge over there. So that is a significant portion for one neighbor to be the recipient of the trees. We're doing that for a host of reasons, but also because to help with some of the flooding. So that's that. In addition to that, I'd be remiss in not mentioning that the overall plan is that when Shedler is developed, there is a significant replant that includes 96 new shade trees, 41 pines, and 182 green giants. So if and when the plan comes to develop and execution, no neighborhood would receive more trees than that ever. And we continue to cultivate and care for the big tree, which we just nominated, which, as everyone knows, because Nancy's here, I have to talk tree, that does its environmental job. So that's a serious impact in one neighborhood. And I wanted to also just say thank you to Shade Tree and Nancy Bigos for making that happen, and Will Richard Waters here. The technology that allows us to pick this site is something called GIS. And so we've been, for the first time ever on Shade Tree, able to make a more informed decision as to the best place to place it. So we're very sensitive to that, and that neighborhood will be the big-time recipient unless people opt out. Please don't opt out. It'll be great to see all those trees be planted. And that's it.
Anyone else?
Yes, I just have a couple questions for Keith. I don't know if I heard, did you talk about the paving of West Saddle River and I zoned out?
Yes.
Sorry.
So we haven't
Sorry,
started.
what did you say?
Which one did you answer yes to? I just want
Through you, Mayor, we haven't started any municipal paving as of yet.
Okay.
So as I've asked Chris, it'll be a little bit of a competition between North Monroe and West Saddle River, which one goes first. Some of that will be predicated on the start of school, because we obviously want to keep the main thoroughfares free of construction once the school year begins. So, but West Saddle River Road is up there in the top two to be paved. We do need to do some advocacy and notifying the residents, because on the day we pave, they're going to be trapped. So you're either in or you're out until the green light comes from engineering that you can safely drive over the pavement. So we're going to do a letter a few weeks before, just letting people know that this is coming, and then there'll be the traditional engineering notification, giving people a few days' notice as to which day it's actually going to be paved, of course contingent on weather.
I mean, we normally do a lot of paving in August. Did something happen?
Well, the contractor's right now involved in concrete work. So, you know, we're doing, thanks to you, we're doing a lot of concrete work. But
I
Chris
thought
is,
they had enough teams
yeah,
that
Chris
it
is
wasn't
working on
gonna
the schedule.
affect the other.
I also received notification today, just as a side, from the county administrator's office that Ackerman Avenue should be paved by mid-October. So we're working with the county, that they'll notify the residents up there when that's going to happen, but they expect it to happen by mid-October.
Okay.
So that will be during the school year, unfortunately.
And the other thing is the Kingsbridge footbridge, because when we originally, awarded the contract and we found out that the people had done their paperwork improperly, I thought it was said we were going to go out to bid very shortly, and then we would be able to award another contract in September. But now it sounds like it's going to be much
So Chris is
later
going
than
back and
that.
forth with the design engineer. When he comes up, we can address that since he's here tonight. And
Okay.
he can fill in the blanks as to those discussions. But that definitely has delayed putting the bid, to re-advertise the bid.
Okay. And I just want to say one last thing, nothing against you, Siobhan, but I don't think you can compare putting in new trees at Shedler when we've taken out 400. I mean, taking out an big old tree, you can't compare putting in 200 4-foot trees. It's going to take 40 years to catch up. So, I mean, I know it's helpful, it's better than not planting anything, but taking down the trees, those big old trees in the first place, to me is a crime.
And let's just be clear, we did not do that. This was all done by prior councils.
Right, but
So
we
we have
are-
not taken, this council has not taken out a weed from
But this
Shedler.
council has voted to take out an additional 280.
We-
If the plan.
I don't think it's 280.
No, it's not 280.
It's not 280. And this is something, by the way, that always disturbs me. Numbers are bandied about, whether it's $600,000 for the sidewalk on Clinton or 280 trees, and it's put out there. Please, let's try and use more accurate information, because
What is the number? Because I thought that's what Yvonne had said.
Siobhan, do you know what the number is?
So I'm not getting into the tree warfare. What I want to address is, you've had all the numbers. Everyone, but the council, I often ask for those informations, and they're cycling through the council. The decision to buy and develop Shedler was made 15 years ago, okay? So that was, whether it's a turf field or a grass field, there'll be tree removal. That's just the way it is. 3.5 acres were removed prior to Evan and I getting here, okay? Everybody funded for development. It's being developed. Your sidewalks, not being mean, nothing personal, took out about 60 shade trees. Progress and development takes out trees. What I'm proud of, and I want my committee to, is they're going to be gone, so we have to talk about what we're going to do next, okay? What Shade Tree wanted to do was help a neighborhood that floods and is having a loss of trees, and took 65 out of 212, okay? 212 available trees, and gave it to one neighborhood to offset that. That's a good thing. So yes, trees are going to be removed, and we can all draw swords and yell at each other, but when the property was purchased, it was for development, and that was decided. And now what this committee, with Nancy sitting here, has done is tried to mitigate it and make things better. The replant is a good thing. It's a good thing. We're going to replant. Is development going to be part of it? Yes, but no other council's ever resisted developing it. It was not purchased to be passive. It was purchased to be developed. And until Evan and I took our seats, there was no serious number and accounting for replacement, because the 3.5 acres were cleared, I don't know, 5 years ago, and we haven't planted one new tree there yet. So I'm very proud of my shade tree for, looking at it, using the tools and technology, helping the neighborhood that wants more trees, and also helping flooding. I think the 65 out of the 212 is a lovely thing.
Yeah, I don't get this argument either, respectfully, Lorraine. On one hand, we have folks who are advocating for a mid-sized soccer field, which was going to take out a number of trees. To Siobhan's point, 3.5 acres were already taken out in favor of that. So the idea somehow that we're going to leave this as this untouched land, nobody ever said that was going to happen. I don't think anybody seriously has ever advocated for that. So to Siobhan's point, the fact that we're now putting provisions in to replace hundreds of trees that were going to be taken down, no matter whatever plan we agree to, is a really good thing. And I think just coming out and trying to criticize that plan in order to make some political hay on the Shedler issue, I just don't think it's really fair. And I agree with Siobhan, there's a lot to be proud of here in terms of the trees that we're putting up. Similarly, I am a strong advocate with you on the sidewalk issue. Trees have to come down because they're there. We want sidewalks. We're going to replant them elsewhere. That's a good thing, the fact that we're having progress, but at the same time acknowledging ecologically what we need to do. So I agree completely with Siobhan on this, and I really do think that this idea of just sort of throwing punches for the sake of throwing punches, it's not really helpful.
I'm not throwing punches to throw punches. A lot of trees were taken down before all of us were on the council. There could be a mid-sized field right now with the number of trees that were taken down. There doesn't need to be any more trees than already were taken down.
That can't be accurate. I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've been on the
I don't
property
think that's
1,000 times.
accurate
That
either.
can't be accurate.
I'd like to say that this was a farm. There were no trees. You can look at the aerial photos from 1959. There are no trees. These trees grew up as weeds. They are hardly old growth. Many of them were ash and died anyway. Many of them are Norway maples, which are invasive. You're going to lose some trees.
And we're going to save the sugar maple. Let's end it with
Yeah,
that.
the one that's next to the house, right.
And with that, I have one comment. Elaine, and as Matt said, we cannot comment on the litigation, but you said something that was, I don't think fair. You said nobody cares about your son. Everybody on this council cares about Daniel, and we look forward to sitting down to discuss this as soon as is possible, as soon as your attorney will agree to sit down with us. And so please, we are ready. That is, here, again, I'm not going to comment on the litigation, but please don't say that we don't care. We do care. And you can throw your hands in the air, but we do. I understand. Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments? No? Then we're going to go to the manager's report.
Actually, Mayor, we
Excuse me,
have a...
we have a representative of Nisavacia, thank you, sorry, to go over our annual audit and corrective action plan.
So, Mayor, the Village Council has been provided with a copy of the 2003 audit report, which has been provided by Bud Jones and the firm of Nisavacia. We have Bob Bruni, our Chief Financial Officer, here, along with Bud, to discuss any questions that the Village Council might have with regard to the audit report, and to talk about the corrective action on any of the recommendations that are listed in the rear of the report. So, Bob?
So just to get started, every year we're required to have an annual audit by an outside auditor. Every government agency in the state of New Jersey has to submit to this process. We have a statutory deadline of June 30th, which we met this year. We've met every statutory deadline since Bud's been involved. And Bud has a required communication that he has to make to the council members as to his role in the audit, what he found, if anything, and he didn't. I'm only kidding. So I'm going to let Bud continue, and then I'll jump in after that.
Thank you, Bob. Good evening.
Good evening, Bud. Thank you for being here.
Sure, my pleasure. So I'm going to jump around a little bit with the report if you want to follow along. If not, that's fine. Also, on page 56 and 57 is the comparative balance sheet for the current fund, or the main operating fund of the village. So for the regular fund within the current fund, we had total assets of almost $16.3 million. Liabilities and a reserve for receivables of other assets of about $8.6 million, which left about $7,680,000 almost in fund balance. That's an increase of about $340,000 of fund balance over the prior year. And 2 years ago, fund balance was at a little bit over $5 million. So your fund balance has grown significantly over the last 2 years, just a little bit in 2023 for the current fund. So jump back a few pages into the footnotes of the report. And on page 26, we summarize the debt situation of the village. So the village has a statutory authority of $268 million that you could possibly issue in statutory debt. You only have $71 million of statutory debt, have the ability to issue another $197 million. Not that we're suggesting that you do that, but you do have that ability. So roughly you're only using about a quarter of the debt capacity that you have. Yes, ma'am.
Does this include debt incurred by Ridgewood Water?
It does. Because your utilities, both the water utility and the parking utility are so-called self-liquidating, meaning that the revenues exceed the expenses, that debt gets removed from the net debt amount. So you'll have your gross debt. We removed the water utility and parking utility debt to get to the net debt because you're self-liquidating. If you were not self-liquidating, that would count to some degree against your net debt. On page 48 is the comparison of tax levies and collections, and it shows the tax levies and collections for the last 3 years. And I really wanted to point out that the last column, the percentage of collection, it's 99.48%. It's very consistent with the 2 prior years, 99.64 and 99.46. It can't get much higher than that. It's about as high as you can go. And the last item in the footnotes is the next page, page 49, is risk management. Now, this information is a little bit old. It's using the December 31st, 2022 financial information for the Bergen Municipal JIF. But it shows on the second line a net position of only $312,000. The fund had a negative change in net position of about $2.7 million in 2022. I didn't see the 2023 yet, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention because if the fund would continue to have deficits in operations, there may be supplemental assessments that the GIF might have to assess to its membership. So it's just something to keep your eye on. And the last item in the financials is on page 101, is the utility operating funds combining balance sheet. And it shows the balance sheet for the water and parking utility operating funds. Fund balance for the water utility operating fund is basically the exact same as it was at the end of 2022. It's a difference of about $7,000, so it's very much the same. The parking utility fund balance went up about $64,000 from $982,000 to $1,046,000. So I'm happy with the financial position of the village, including your debt levels. We also had some comments and recommendations in the report. None of the items that we've identified I would suggest are of a serious nature. The management suggestions that we have in the report, probably the one thing that I would that we put in for all of our towns was related to COVID-19 funding. There's a large amount of funding that was received for the ARPA funds, and for all of our towns, we just want to make sure that the funds are completely obligated by the end of this calendar year and then expended by the end of 2026. And that was it. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to try and answer them.
I particularly appreciated the advice on the COVID accounting, because we'll have to be ready for that anytime in the next few years.
Anybody else?
So attached to the resolution is the corrective action plan based on the 3 findings, which I have to tell you, Bob, to your team and to all the department directors, this is as clean an audit as I've seen in the 4 towns where I've served. So we have a lot to be proud of from a financial management standpoint, but we have 3 recommendations, and there's a corrective action plan attached for each of those recommendations.
So I'll go over it real quick, if you don't mind. Finding number 1 relates to the cancellation of any unused capital funds or funding of any deficits that may exist. We have an ongoing process where annually we review the capital projects, what their status is, whether we can use them for other purposes, which we've done in this year quite a bit. So we are utilizing the funds, and we are making certain that if there are any deficits, so to speak, that they're identified in any bond and note sale fundings that we have upcoming for the year. The second one relates to reconciliation process from outside offices to the finance department. And for quite some time now, we are limited in the number of personnel that are in the finance department. Again, budgetary issues always come back and say, we have to be careful of what our new hirings might be. So we try to make the best with what we have, and I have an outstanding staff. Could I use more? Absolutely. This is one of those areas where I could use more because due to the lack of personnel, we are unable to perform these internal control reviews that we would like to do. So we are in the process of developing, and it's an ongoing process, of bringing the reporting in from the outside offices to finance on a monthly basis, doing the reconciliation process and making certain that the funds are agreed to what we have in our financial statement. So again, an ongoing process, and we'll get it done. This won't be here. And the third one is in regard to obligations that we record for encumbrances. You're aware that encumbrances are like blanket orders for purchase orders that we anticipate spending during the year. So we may put out a blanket order for tires, for example, $200,000. At the end of the year, we may have $50,000 left, and we still may have some stragglers coming into the next year. So we'll keep that encumbrance going. We get to a point in time where we look at them, but we don't always look at them at the end of the year. But we do review them to make certain that there's some integrity to them and that we're not just holding on to funds that aren't going to be used. So I think in that situation, again, it's a process that's done. It just isn't done at the end of the year. But other than that, staff that came on board, fantastic. Bud is always available to questions that we may have. Keith and I have called him on several occasions for direction, so it's a good working relationship, and we appreciate the input we get back from them. Thank you.
Questions or comments, anyone?
Thank you, gentlemen.
No, then I would just like to echo Keith's comments that in this $60 million budget, if this was the best you could do, Bud, then looks like Bob and his team are doing a pretty good job. Thank you both very, very much.
Yeah, and we actually changed teams. So we had a different team come in this year, and a different team. They have a little different style. That the audit program is the same, but how you do it can be a little different.
Sure.
And so, even more congratulations as a result, because normally a new team coming in is going to look at things differently, and maybe find some other things possibly, and again they did. And we had the complete cooperation of your employees.
Thank you all so much. Have
Thank
a
you,
nice
gentlemen.
evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I just want to remind the council, you will have to sign an affidavit at next week's meeting indicating that you've read at a minimum the general comments and recommendations.
And let's go to our manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be brief only because a lot of my report tonight is covered by some of the agenda items that are listed before you. But I do just want to update everyone. The East Glen Sidewalk Project is complete, as Councilmember Winograd would call it, the fake East Glen. So that is closed out. We are ongoing at Clinton Avenue, and we are hoping that despite this week's weather challenges, that by the end of next week we'll be able to close out that project as well. With regard to the West Glen sidewalks, I have had some inquiries from residents in that neighborhood about the status of that project. We are currently in the process of dealing with both with Bergen County Engineering and with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection on what the best course of action is to install sidewalks on West Glen Avenue. The county has given us some resistance to building retaining walls in the county right-of-way on the side of the street that was initially proposed. So we have pivoted to reopen discussions with the NJDEP about placing sidewalks on the opposite side of the road between Alpine and Heights. The issue there is there's a substantial drainage ditch, which the DEP has regulations that are applicable. We had a Zoom call with the DEP and the county today to try to talk this through. We do have an endorsement letter from the county administrator to place the sidewalks on that side of the street in lieu of having to build the retaining walls on the west side. So we're working through that, and hopefully by the end of this month we'll have some clarity on what we can and can't do. But again, if we had to build retaining walls outside of the county's right-of-way, we would be building them on private property, and we would require negotiation for individual easements with each of the property owners on that side of West Glen Avenue. I can tell you that I went through a similar process when I was in Elmwood Park, and it took us 3 years to negotiate and get all the easements settled. We don't want to wait that long, especially with the pedestrian concerns on West Glen Avenue, which is why we've pivoted to talk to the DEP about doing it on the opposite side of the street. So more to come. I can understand that folks are frustrated. They thought that this project was going to be imminent, but we're trying to find the path of least resistance to accomplish the sidewalk build out on West Glen Avenue. And lastly, Boxcar had their soft opening at the train station. So the concession is open. Heather and I had an opportunity to go over there this morning, and they plan to do a formal grand opening once they iron out some of the kinks the second week in September. So we'll alert the village council to that event. But I can tell you, while Heather and I were there, I think 2 people came in to buy coffee, and they just started this endeavor on Monday. So we're hoping for their success over at the train station. And Mayor, I'm going to forego my announcements tonight because they are sort of repetitive in light of the lengthy agenda.
Thank you, Keith. Let's go to our council reports. Evan, want to kick it off?
I too will be brief tonight, based after the same reasons. Keith mentioned none of my committees have met in the last 2 weeks, so I don't really have anything to report.
Great. Siobhan?
I have a couple things to report.
Shocking.
So we haven't had a meeting in a couple weeks, and about 2 weeks ago, I was lucky enough to attend the award ceremony for Ridgewood Water, and I was simply so proud to work with Rich Calby, who received this massive award. And it is, I'm going to pass this. This is very heavy, very heavy. So, turn it around. It's facing this way.
Yes,
You're all a bunch of critics tonight. I hope you know that. So congratulations, Rich Calby. Don't let them steal your thunder. And congratulations to the Ridgewood Water staff. And this was very exciting to be at. You know, as a member of the council, we often go to things, and I was medium excited, but I left absolutely thrilled. And I think this whole council, whether I'm holding it the right way or not, is super proud of you and your team. And I know that Paul and I felt very lucky to be there and see it. And I'm going to pass this so all my critics can see how heavy it is, but congratulations to Ridgewood Water. It's really heavy. So, the second thing that I want to mention is that Access is hard at work, and we have Access Weekend coming up. Due to the Jewish holidays, we've pushed it out to October 19th, and we're going to be expanding it through some additional programs like Pull Over Properly, and doing our regular routines with the Ridgewood Public Library. And added to that, I wanted to just say thank you to the STEPS program, and because the police are here, we had an unfortunate situation with a concrete barrier uptown, and the police department stepped in and created signage and really made a better flow of traffic. So thank you to the Access Committee for all their hard work. If you don't have the date marked down, it's October 19th, and there'll be more information coming on that, and that's it.
Thank you, Siobhan. Lorraine?
I'm going to ditto Evan's comments.
Excellent. Pam?
And people say we don't agree on anything.
Look at that.
Okay, thank you. The planning board met last night. We had two presentations at two properties, 118 Prospect Street and 1200 East Ridgewood Avenue. And we approved both their applications. What was interesting is, with respect to where they were trying to increase parking and expand the spots where cars could park, we suggested to them that they use permeable paving, and they agreed. So that's really interesting. I sat in on the Library Board of Trustees meeting when Evan was out, and that was very interesting. They are continuing with their renovations with HVAC, installing sprinklers, painting, new walls. The upstairs area has yet to be finished. They are also hiring an engineering firm to help them prepare the specs for activating their emergency generator. They also have a new fish tank in the children's library, which is just beautiful. And let's see. Well, as you've heard, we are creating a new residential flood advisory committee, and anyone can apply. In fact, I've left application forms on the table over here on the side in the courtroom. The application period is open until September 3rd. They're very simple forms. You can submit them to the clerk's office, either by hand or electronically. And the idea is to give residents who have had the interiors of their homes flooded a voice, so that we can demonstrate that what the problem is, and that they can have a say in what the solutions are. We are looking for 2 residents who have been flooded by the Hohokus Brook, 2 residents who have been flooded by the Saddle River, 2 residents who have been flooded by stormwater. We will also throw in somebody from Green Ridgewood to be the liaison, and there will be a staff person, hopefully from the engineering department. Let's see, what else? Green Ridgewood met on July 11th. I don't really remember what we did, because after that we had our annual fun party. Let's see, I will say, just to let you know, New Brunswick is now the first town in New Jersey to establish a stormwater utility. That's pretty interesting. It's going to generate about $7 million for their flood mitigation program. Let's see. CBDAC will not be meeting this month. That's the Central Business District Advisory Committee. And Ridgewood Water gave us, Paul and me, a tour of our PFAS treatment facilities from their not breaking ground yet to almost done. And that was the Ames facility, Cedar Hill, Prospect, and Ravine. It was really interesting. They're not all cookie cutter. They're not all the same. They are of different capacities, and they look different in every neighborhood. The Open Space Committee had another 2 park walks in the month of July. We kind of got rained out on the one at Grove Park, but the one at Graydon Pool was very interesting and was very well attended. I want to thank Nancy Begos for giving all the members of the Open Space Committee so many historical records. It's fascinating to read them, and it really helps us in crafting our tours. The Chamber of Commerce had its Super Saturday Sidewalk Sale, and it was just a lot of fun. There were a lot of people in town, and it was hot as hell, but it was fun. And I forgot to say about the library, their new passport program, where you can get your passport at the library. Takes about 15 minutes to apply, and then they send it off to the State Department, and 2 weeks later you can have your passport. This is only for first-time passport applications. It's not for renewals. Unfortunately, one of the librarians at the library, Larissa Brooks, who has been a pleasure to deal with, is leaving. And I attended her going away party. It was really kind of bittersweet. She is the librarian who founded the Sustainability Cafe and the Seed Catalog. So she left for a really exciting job. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. And I have nothing. My committees have not met in the last couple of weeks. So let's move on to the Clinton Avenue parking and opening to traffic issue.
Mayor,
Chief?
so I'd like to invite the chief and Chris up, if I may.
I was going to do it, but
Okay.
by all means, you should do it.
So as we discussed previously, there are 2 ordinances listed for tonight with a special meeting to follow concerning Clinton Avenue. One is to rescind the street closure, again, pending the review and guidance from the Attorney General's office. And the second is if that road closure was to be rescinded, that we would then have the same parking restrictions in and around Ridge School on Clinton Avenue as we do the other elementary schools. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Lyons and Mr. Rudishauser to talk about those recommendations from their respective departments.
So the parking regulations that we have around pretty much every elementary school at
Excuse
this
me,
time-
Chief?
Is it not good enough? Got to get closer?
There you go.
There we
Thank
go. I was too far back. The parking regulations that are around every elementary school currently are 8 to 9 a.m., 2:30 to 3:30 p.m., Monday through Friday, September 1st through June 30th. So we're recommending just having the same parking regulations on that street that basically are on every other street that's around an elementary school at this time.
On Kenilworth, it's 8 a.m. to 9:30 and 2 o'clock to 3:30.
So some of them are a little longer because that's why we initially were going to propose a little bit longer here, because some have a little bit. Kenilworth is one of those that gets an offshoot from the high school, not an elementary school, because Kenilworth, even though it's there, people park all the way down. So
There
it's
are
a lot
very
of.
little people getting out of those cars.
I was going to
and
say.
running across my
Oh,
lawn.
I'm sure they, go different places, but It's the elementary school times that these were kind of based on when they come in and out, whereas the high school has different dismissal times and different times. So it's based really not so much on anything else but what time people and children are dropped off to school and picked up to school, just so they kind of create the congestion that parking on both sides of the street or on the street would cause. So they actually do the drop-off and not, a couple streets away. That's how it's all based on. Now, there are overlaps. Like you said, schools are close to Somerville is closer to the high school. Sometimes you get overlap, so the times could be slightly off, but the majority of elementary schools are all this time frame because the school board has made the elementary schools all the same, so we tried to mirror the parking restrictions to their dismissal and admission times.
I am concerned about people getting confused and about all our different parking regulations. So I was looking for some uniformity. But it sounds like you have reasons for differences.
So that's why we try to keep all the elementary schools with this time frame, and then the other schools, whether they be BF or GW or the high school. But again, the high school is its own animal. They have a lot of different regulations. They have no parking that the councils, previous councils have done because the kids are getting to the age where they can drive. So it's not just drop off and pick up. They might not have a first period. It's much more of an open campus, almost like a college. You have people that don't show up right at 8:30 or 7:30. Then you have people who do. Some people come midday. So anything around the high school, it's hard to say that that's uniform. It's really not. There's a lot of varying things around the elementary schools. It was just based on these times.
This is exactly the same at all the other 5 elementary schools.
They based these on the surrounding towns. Like I said, if there's an overlap from another school, whether it be BF and Travell, there might be slightly differences because BF lets in and out different times, whereas Travell doesn't. Right. However, the idea around the elementary schools was to keep it uniform and base it strictly on that.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem.
I interrupted you, sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Chris, anything else on the parking that you want to add?
As the chief said, we're trying for consistency. It is a training effort. When the police department's traffic officers notice something, we're more than happy to have a discussion with them, and if necessary, present to the council any revisions to the ordinances. An example of that is for Ridge School is we have the painted "Do Not Block the Box" over by Murray. I think that's worked out quite well. Again, we've had problems in the past that had to push towards that, particularly in icy weather when we can't get the salt out before the parents start parking and queuing for their kids. We had one storm that proved quite a mess. So as the officers relay their observations to us in engineering, we'll discuss solutions, and if anything's warranted for an ordinance change, we'll present it to you.
Chief, do you want to address the rescinding of the road closure?
So the primary thing I would say to that is that I've reached out to the Attorney General's office, multiple different people there, and showed our concerns and showed them the guidance that they provided, and then asked for a written clarification stating and saying, we're not trying to do anything illegal. We want to do exactly what we want. And I know the DOT has been giving different guidance, so I was kind of trying to get them both all together here and saying, if the DOT is saying this and the Attorney General is saying this, can you please give me the proper guidance?
Right. And just so the council knows, I worked with the chief on Monday to raise that request up to the chief of staff level. So the chief of staff for the Attorney General does have our request for this opinion in his email box, and we are awaiting some sort of response.
Keith, do we think we're going to get a response before September 4th?
Oh, I anticipate we will. We've flagged this everywhere that we can. I do believe that a few of the key people that we need to talk to are on vacation this particular week. Mm-hmm. At least that's the feedback we've gotten preliminarily. But I can tell you Monday we're going to be on a full court press to try to expedite whatever they will provide us.
Okay.
And I just want to be clear that the guidance that you have been given by the Attorney General, who you answer to, is different thus far than the guidance we've been given from the DOT.
So far, they are varying. That's why I want to get this clarified, because I'm not trying to violate any rules or regulations. I'm trying to follow the strictest guidance here. And there has been other towns that have been going through similar incidents, and I won't get into them, but it's all been following very close to what the Attorney General has stated of dealing with restricting access to different classes of people on the street.
And I just want to stress that, and I don't want to speak for Matt, he can speak for himself, but, you know, in the meetings that we had with the Clinton Avenue residents, I think there were 3 meetings and then an on-site meeting. Both Matt and the chief relayed to the residents that they had doubts about the legality of keeping this road closed based on the guidance that was provided from the Attorney General's office relative to other municipalities who had tried similar road closures.
So again, closing the road is probably not an issue. It's allowing certain people to access it during those times.
Right.
That's where this becomes an issue. If we would like to close the road in its entirety as a hard close, that's very different and definitely within our purview to do. We would still need DOT approval, but it's easy to do, and that was original.
And for comparative purposes, we do that all the time, right? We closed a road on Halloween, but it was a hard closure.
Yes.
We closed the road for the downtown plaza during the summer times. It was a hard closure. Where the Attorney General takes issue is when there are different classes of people, some allowed to access and some not allowed to access. That's where the disparity exists, and some of the parallels to the situations in the other towns, those were similar circumstances.
They were similar in that they had set who can and who cannot
So,
enter.
so when we say hard closure, to be clear, that means if you're a resident of Clinton Ave and you want to go to work and you didn't move your car before the hard close, you're not going to work that day.
Yeah, it would completely, just like when we do downtown for the holidays or the
Right.
4th of July, regardless of whether your business is on the street or anything is
done.
there at that time, you are locked in during those times,
And
which is why I
similarly, no
think that's,
landscaping, no Amazon, the street literally becomes,
it literally becomes dead and a pedestrian, basically a
Right.
pedestrian zone.
It's a matter of it being closed to everyone.
So I have a couple things. First, I'm going to leave the clarification, and thank you for seeking it, and I have no opinion because we don't have all the information, but thank you for writing the letter and following up, and thank you to Keith, and really I think the whole council feels there's no determinative decision to make till you get that. Should this move forward and the ordinance goes, I just have a couple questions. One, when do the existing signs come down? Like, there's existing signs on Clinton, I saw. They're going to come down this week?
There are signs that indicate that the road is closed during school hours.
So,
Right.
So we're going to move forward until we have 2 paths, right? We're waiting for clarification, and then we're moving forward, assuming that, you know, the Attorney General's going to say, you know, the opposite of NJDOT.
So we wouldn't remove any signs until it was finally passed until September.
And-
This is just the
Till the
initial
ordinance is
reading,
legal.
nothing.
Till the
is-
ordinances are
So it
legal.
would be passed 20 days later.
Yes.
So in that short term, are we going to work with the school board to issue something? Because when I was counting on the calendar, which is something I really do, and you can all make fun of me, we're close to the start of school, assuming we go down to the secondary, you know, we've got this 2-path thing. I want to make sure that we have clear delineation for the residents and the HSAs and Christine Corliss, that we need to let people know, because if the existing signage is going to stay up, we're going to have like a sign confusion situation.
So we're lucky we have a very good relationship with the school superintendent. So we would have, my traffic department, work with the schools and make sure we're out there and force kind of mitigating the change. We would have to inform people of how to act and change, you know, for a while, I would say, all through September and probably into October, just so people get used to it. But I wouldn't think any changes happen until after.
Yeah, until it becomes effective, that regulation is still in place. The present regulation is still in place. So you wouldn't change the signage until it became effective if there was a change made.
I'm not gonna say
And
the
keep
word
in mind,
sample, right?
I'm sorry?
You're going to say the word. No, I just am concerned because the timing, you know, you've got newness. Every time there's a new start of school, you have new students, you have new kindergartners. So I just want to make sure that's clear. And the only other thing is I love the shortened time. I think it's much better. I think it's much less intrusive on the residents. And I thought that was a little tighter for the elementary school. But I just want to make sure if that path continues, you know, we've got the 2, that we clearly communicate to the general user. Because, you know,
As soon as we know the direction, we're going to sit down with Dr. Schwartz and with Christine Corliss, who's the PIO for the school district, and get clear communication from the police department through the schools to those families. Keep in mind, we're threading a needle here, right? So depending on what the Attorney General says, School opens on the 3rd. It's the day after Labor Day, I believe. The council meeting where this would be adopted is September 4th, Heather, right? So, and then you have
And
the
then
20
20
day.
days.
But again, we'd have to sit with the schools and sort of determine how we were going to enforce
I'm good.
that.
I just want to make sure it's clear, because I will. This is my chance to tell an anecdotal story and use up some time, Evan. I was the safety chair at Orchard, and I do want to make a shameless plug, and Lorraine, is the more we can encourage people to not drive and to enjoy the walkability side of Ridgewood, this is an opportunity to include that in that messaging. It is, I grew up in Ridgewood, moved back. It is shocking to me how many people endure massive amounts of traffic, unsafe situations, and the sidewalks will make it more walkable. So I'm hoping, and I think you'll do this too, in all the messaging, we stress that. October's Walk to School Month, but it really can be every month of the year. And that's all that I want to say. And Lorraine's going to say the same thing, because she loves walking.
So Keith, can I ask, so we're meeting next week, and then we don't meet again until the 4th. If we do get an answer from the Attorney General's office before the 4th, to be able to at least allow the Clinton residents to know what that is? Is there
You
any way-
you can't expedite it because
Well,
Heather.
no, I'm saying if we get, let's say we get, so we're meeting next week on the 14th, let's say we get a response back on like the 20th. Right, is there a way to potentially communicate out what that response is
Oh,
ahead
sure.
of the September board, right?
Yeah,
Because-
honestly, I think regardless of what the response is, whether it be in favor of the street closure or against the street closure, I think we should make that public so that everyone's made
Immediately,
aware of it
right.
immediately. Absolutely.
Because here's where I'm going with this. So, and again, I don't think we can say this enough. The vote tonight is not to do anything other than to have the discussion on the agenda for the 4th. We're not doing anything tonight other than ensuring we can have the discussion. So I'm going to be voting yes tonight. With that said, I very much have a bunch of questions and some, and I know we're not allowed to talk about it, Matt, so I'm going to bite my tongue. I'm not unsympathetic, and I want to have a discussion on it, but I do think that Attorney General's opinion is going to be critical, because what I won't do is vote in favor of an ordinance that the police chief tells me he won't enforce because he believes it's illegal, that council tells me we can't enforce because he believes it's illegal, and we have an Attorney General telling us that we can't enforce it. Like, I don't know how we go against that and keep our jobs, right? On the other hand, if we do get something else from the Attorney General, I'd like to have a discussion to see what makes sense, if something can make sense, but I don't think we can really have a meaningful discussion on this topic until we have that letter back.
Agreed. And again, as I said at the top of my comments after the public hearing, this is a procedural process tonight to introduce this ordinance so that we could try, if we need to, stay in line with adopting it at the same time school opens. I think that's the chief's recommendation, because otherwise if we have a lot of unanswered questions, is it enforceable, is it not enforceable, can we do it, can't we do it, going into the first week of school, I think we're gonna have a lot bigger problems on our hands, or the police department's gonna have a larger set of problems on our hands. So, from our perspective here, we now have 2 state agencies, the Attorney General's office and the Department of Transportation, giving us conflicting direction on what we can and cannot do on Clinton Avenue. And we need to get that cleared up in the month of August so that we can make a recommendation to the council as to how we feel you should move forward, but more importantly, what the direction is to these families at Ridge School as to what they are and are not allowed to do when they're dropping off and picking up their kids on a daily basis.
And I do want to thank the chief for taking the initiative to get that letter out to the AG's office, because again, I think that will be definitive for this council and what we do on this.
And I do always encourage people to walk to school, and we do a lot of campaigns more with the biking as well, so we try to do the safe biking campaigns to get more people to bike and walk to school, especially when the weather is nice. But
And I don't want to prolong the discussion, but during the public comment, I did hear someone question why we didn't ask for this Attorney General's opinion back in the winter into the spring when we were having the resident meetings. And I'll be honest with you, governing today is a challenge. And, you have to make the best decision in the interest of public safety, even if there's a doubt in your mind. And when the chief and Matt opined that they didn't feel, based on the regulations coming from the Attorney General's office, it was legal to keep the street closed, I pressed back against them at that time because there were no sidewalks. So we could have had a situation where there was no street closure and there were no sidewalks. And it was a safety risk to ask the Attorney General formally at that time to issue an opinion, because if he said we had to open up the road, there were no safety procedures in place.
And I will confirm that.
So it wasn't the ideal, it
discussion
wasn't
at
the
time.
ideal situation, but it was the best situation at the time.
Right.
And now here we are, based on the circumstances that have been presented to us this month, the sidewalks are being put in place, and we await a formal response from the Attorney General's office. The bright side of that is, if he determines that we can't keep the street closed, we now have sidewalks to accommodate those pedestrians.
And I will say, without getting into specifics, my decision was not made in a vacuum. I contacted the Bergen County Chiefs of Police Association and the State Chiefs of Police Association, and pretty much every one of them agreed with me and have been abiding by that Attorney General's recommendation in their jurisdictions. And I'm talking about close to estimated 500 police chiefs in the state of New Jersey. I know every situation, I'm not saying situations aren't different. Every municipality has their own unique challenges, and I'm not saying anything's different, but it seems like there was no one who said, oh no, we're not going by that. You can 100% close that, it's upon you. They're like, no, we have to go this way. That's where I came, my decision was not made alone, not to mention with the safety factor with all my very well-trained traffic officers, both of which have served on the Fatal Accident Investigation Squad. All these were recommendations that were made to me. It wasn't just my assertion that I'm the guru of traffic. I am not. They are, but I try to get to the right people and have the people who have the most knowledge give me the information that I can act upon.
Thank you so much, Chief, and thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
And let's move on. Heather?
Okay, I want a motion to suspend the work session and convene a special public meeting.
So moved. Second.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Whites, sorry, I'm sorry.
I vote
Whites and Vagianos.
Yes. And so, this is the Village Council Special Public Meeting. The date is August 7th, 2024. The time is 9:22. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same, as provided by law, of a schedule including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin?
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds?
Here.
Councilmember Whites?
Here.
Councilmember Winograd?
Here.
And Mayor Vagianos?
Here. I move the first reading of ordinance 4007.
Second.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read ordinance 4007 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-64, Schedule 14, Streets Closed to Traffic.
I second the motion.
No.
No.
Sorry.
I move that ordinance
sorry.
4007 be adopted on first reading and that September 4, 2024 be fixed as the date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes. I move the first reading of ordinance 4008.
Second.
Okay.
There you go.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes, so ordered. Will the clerk please read ordinance 4008 by title?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 265 of the Code of the Village of Ridgewood, Vehicles and Traffic, at Section 265-66, Schedule 16, No Stopping or Standing.
I move that ordinance 4008 be adopted on first reading and that September 4th, 2024 be fixed as a date for the hearing thereon.
Second.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes, let's entertain a motion to adjourn the special public meeting and reconvene our work session.
So moved.
Second.
Perrin?
Yes.
Reynolds?
Yes.
Whites?
Yes.
Winograd?
Yes.
And Vagianos?
Yes. And let's get back to our regular agenda. Keith, why don't you walk us through this?
Mayor, at this time, we have 3 items tonight to be presented by Ridgewood Water. Mr. Calby is with us to discuss each.
Good evening, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for the acknowledgement of the award. It was the first one given by the state, and with over 500 utilities in the state of New Jersey, it's quite an achievement for Ridgewood to be first.
Well-deserved.
Yeah, we're all very proud of it. Thank you. So 3 items tonight. The first one is 15A1 is award of contract amendment for our lead service line replacement program. The firm of CDM Smith was hired in 2023 to complete the planning and coordinate the agreements between all 4 municipalities for the lead service line replacement program. We're now looking to move forward with the next phase of that program in anticipation of the start of the work in 2025. This is the implementation phase, which includes developing of design and construction documents, assisting with the bidding process, and providing on-site construction management inspection services for approximately 500 lead service line replacements throughout the 4 municipalities served by Ridgewood Water. The cost for this professional service is estimated at not to exceed of $582,750. Funding for this project is accounted for in the Ridgewood Water capital budget. Any questions?
Questions? Anyone?
Did you say it's 500 service lines that are being replaced?
That would be the first contract that's covered by this. They will do the design for that and then oversee that entire implementation through construction and completion, including all the communications with the customers.
Questions? Good.
Okay. Next item is 15A2. This is the award of soil disposal to RVH Mulch Supply. Every year, Ridgewood Water is involved in many actions throughout the system, involve water main replacement, water main break repairs, right now lead service line replacements, and other daily repairs. Whenever we remove soil from those operations, we have to dispose of it. We've tested the soil that has been removed to date. It has come back from the LSRP as suitable material to be removed, non-contaminated. And we've got a price from RVH Mulch of, well, they're out of Wyckoff, New Jersey, but the site is in a different location that'll be brought to, $325 per container truck for not to exceed of $100,000 for the balance of this year. And this is funded under the water utility operating budget.
Questions? Let's go.
Okay, the final item is 15A3. This is for an award of a bid. On Wednesday, July 24th, Ridgewood Water received 12 bids for water service line replacements. These are for main to curb replacements, the ones that are owned by the utility, not those owned by private residences. This work is necessary, similar to what we came to you a couple months to get emergency funding for. We've got an influx of residents that are deciding to replace the service lines on their own, and by law, we have 45 days to go in and replace our side of it so that there's no hazard of lead contamination. So due to that, we felt it was best to go out and get a bid and solicit prices to continue that work, because we've already exhausted $164,000 of the $250,000 that you authorized us already. So we took bids on that. The successful bidder was Sugar Property Services of East Orange, New Jersey, not to exceed bid of $151,000. And that is funded under the water capital budget.
Questions?
Underwater capital?
There's a typo in the...
That was exactly my question.
Yes, it's
Okay,
water
thank
capital
you.
budget.
So are the ones that they're doing themselves, are they like banding together as neighbors and doing them by street? Is it, are you seeing, and how many are opting in and how many are opting out? Just wondering.
So right now, we have 283 customers have opted into our program.
Okay.
Out of the 500 we proposed for the first contract. In addition to that, we have 81 that have done it on their own already. So there's a sufficient amount of people that are taking it upon themselves to get it done now. They don't want to wait. And it's sporadic.
Right.
There are places where people have banded together. We had that instance downtown, CBD. Several businesses got together and did it with one contractor. You know, there's some cost efficiency in that. The costs that we've been seeing are very good. They're a lot lower than we had originally anticipated. So a few months fast forward, we're going to be coming here for the funding ordinance for that first contract, and you're going to find it's a lot better than what we anticipated a year ago or so. So, yep.
Anybody else? Good, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mayor, the next issue is under parking. If I could call the chief and Chris back up, we're going to talk about the amended ordinance proposal for parking on Overbrook Road. Chris's office has done an extensive survey of the affected residents in the impacted area, and those results are in the packet this evening, and Chris can walk us through those.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. There was a request for consideration of changing some of the parking ordinances on Overbrook Road in accordance with the village's policies. When we have such requests, we poll the residents that would be affected. In my memo to Keith for distribution to you folks, there's a copy of the tax map indicating which homes we surveyed. I gave a deadline for responses. I did get 2 additional responses after that deadline. One was in favor of proposed parking changes, and one was in favor of the alternate suggestion regarding parking permits or permitting just residents to park on Overbrook. Overwhelmingly, the survey had 24 individual responses from 20 addresses. Obviously, some partners each had a say in what they thought, were opposed to any changes. I had only 3 individual responses from 2 addresses that were in favor of the parking changes that I presented to the residents. I did notify a little bit late today a couple of residents that had sent a bulk email that this would be on the council agenda. I think they were a little upset that I didn't give them enough advance notice. So if there's any questions, we're happy to try to answer them.
Questions?
Yes, I don't understand how to read this map.
Excuse me?
I don't understand how to read this map. Where are you saying I can't tell who on this map answered your survey? Is it every house that's on this map?
They have the addresses in a corresponding
Did you get the color version or the black and white version?
Black and
I got the black and white.
Oh, gee whiz, that's too bad. I used the yellow highlighter.
No wonder.
Yeah, that is a Village Hall problem. Our department is blessed with a color copier. The 5th floor is not. That might change in the future to clarify such situations for you.
So you polled the people who live on Overbrook? Is that what's your
Yes.
yellow?
Yeah, there's 2,
So not
there are 2
Beverly,
responses.
not Fairway, not Hampton?
There are 2 responses from Hampton.
Gotcha.
So are we,
Plus 2 responses from Hampton.
we're
Okay.
basically just talking about this to say it's not moving forward, is that right, Lorraine?
That's what I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Yes,
So
we're
I mean, I
not-
think,
My recommendation would be leave things as they are.
I would agree.
Based on the feedback that I received.
Chief, you concur?
Yeah, I concur with that.
Sam?
Is everyone in concurrence with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's go.
The only, can I just say one thing? Because
You may.
Lorraine, so I totally agree. I think this is good. Thank you, even without the copy. It was a lot of information. Lorraine, you're going to follow up with the 2 people that we met? When I met.
I followed up with the Overbrook resident.
Okay. I'll follow up with the other one and CC you, so you can chime in.
Okay.
Okay, because we had this, with council chat, somebody came in, and I want to make sure they understand that the idea has been vetted, we have more information, and we're not doing anything, and these are the reasons why.
Now, this is, in the last couple of years, this is the 3rd such survey we did. We did one on Rayanne Court. We also had a residence, I believe, approached you, Ms. Reynolds, about some changes on North Walnut.
Correct.
Right.
Officer Sergeant Torino and I discussed it. He was in favor. We did nonetheless do the survey, and we were quite surprised that the majority of the people that came back in that survey liked the regulations the way they were.
Yeah.
So,
Good. Thank you for conducting the survey.
Yeah, thanks for doing it.
Gives us a very clear picture.
Mayor, will you indulge me to jump around the agenda, just so I can get the department heads out?
I would definitely indulge you.
All right, so if we can move to C, 8 and 9, And also D1 and C8 connect, because it all has to do with the special 3 law enforcement assignments in the school district. So C8 is
So that's.
a resolution that has been prepared to enter into a shared services agreement with the Ridgewood Board of Education for the assignment, the hiring and the assignment of 3 special law enforcement officers for the 2024-2025 school year. The full agreement is not attached to this resolution. I'll have the chief speak to that. I know he spoke to Dr. Schwartz today regarding same.
So we had drafted a draft version of an agreement, a shared services agreement with the Board of Education. We sent that over to the Board of Education and Dr. Schwartz. He sent it to his attorneys, and they were reviewing it. From what he said today, they have no substantive changes, but some wording and little things like that. So they have every intention of passing it at their next board meeting, and as soon as they have the finalized draft, it'll come back to us. And I'm sure we're going to want to look at it one last time, but it doesn't sound like there's anything that would change dramatically enough for us to not be in favor of it. They did say that they're 100% on board with the 3 officers, as we were hoping a couple of months ago. So now we're only waiting on just the little bit of wording changes.
So if we receive that document by next Wednesday, will the council permit us to put the shared services resolution on the agenda? If we don't, then we may have to default to the 4th, which would require a special public meeting, which we have already relative to the Clinton Ave situation. So one way or the other, we'll be able to adopt, but I would like to do it next week if we have it in hand.
It makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, and then related to that is D1, which is the ordinance change that would be introduced next week, establishing the position. So Chief, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so basically, everything the police department does has to be approved by the governing body, and basically all we're doing is changing our structure to include the Class 3 special position. There's not much extra wording in there. I know the village attorney has looked at it. It's fine. It's just basically saying that the Class 3s will now fall under the police department and basically respond to us for all their training and all that stuff, and then go directly to the schools for their day-to-day
Any
work
objection?
schedule.
Okay, and then the other item for the police department is C9. This is a simple housekeeping issue, which is regard to the procurement of the new police patrol motorcycle, a favorite of Councilmember Reynolds. But we just have to change the name of the vendor that we're purchasing it from Williams Harley Davidson to HDP Harley LLC. So that's just an administrative change that Heather will put on a resolution for next week. All right?
I just have a question. Who has their motorcycle license already?
Oh, so you have to go to a specialized school. So we're sending 2 officers this year, and then 2 officers next year, so there'll be 4. So, if we want to expand, or at least we have 4, so it'll get adequate use. As to who has a motorcycle license, a bunch of police officers have a motorcycle, including myself. But that doesn't allow you to drive a police motorcycle in a emergency response capacity. So you'd have
I
to
believe
choose
the
that.
village engineer also has his
Oh, I believe so,
motorcycle
too.
license.
I would compliment the chief on his selection of
We'll get into that in greater detail at another meeting.
There's going to have to be a lot of jokes about chips, though.
Okay.
It should be.
Yeah.
Anything else for the chief?
All good?
Okay. I'm going to move to the 3 engineering issues. The first is C6. This is with regard to sewer fees for significant discharges. This would be an ordinance that establishes a fee structure based on equivalent dwelling units for commercial, industrial, minor, and significant discharges to the sanitary system. The rate for '23 was $4.70 per 1,000 gallons of flow in excess of 109,500 gallons per year discharged from commercial properties as measured by the water meter consumption during the 2 winter quarters.
And I'm going to recuse myself on this matter.
Okay. Chris is recommending the same for this year, Chris?
Yes. I work with the finance department. We take a look at what our costs are, and We look at what our costs are and make adjustments as necessary. This year, they recommended that the ordinance fee rate remain the same. The way this ordinance is set up, it has this type of annual review. So you're going to see this kind of ordinance every year. Some years, they might go up. Some years, like this year, recommendation will be to remain the same. But we need the ordinance. Once it's adopted, finance can bill the responsible entities for what they owe the village.
Chris, you might not know the answer to this question, but why do the commercial entities get the first 109,000 gallons for free, and the nonprofits have to get billed from the very first gallon?
Commercial entities have the privilege of paying property taxes to the village. Nonprofits don't. So they pay from the first drop of water they consume
Okay.
and discharge.
That makes sense. Thank you.
All right, the next issue that's affected by engineering is C12. This is the cottage parking lot tree planting program. This is something that Councilmember Winograd brought to the engineering department's attention as a result of a Shade Tree Commission meeting. So, Shimon, I don't know if you want to take it from there, and then Chris can discuss it further.
So first, I want to thank engineering for being so great to the Shade Tree Commission. And just some information, with the Central Business District planting coming to an end, we went out and we started to look for like other places we could put trees downtown. And it wasn't really me, it was Adam and Chris went out. Cottage Place has no trees right now, like none. And the Hot Jewelry Box patch of dirt is unplantable, which I'm hoping we can talk about Hot Jewelry Box as well a little bit. So because we had 12 trees placed in the Central Business District in our budget, not like, actually placed, we went out seeking places to find trees. And this is the recommendation that they came up. The cottage lot is like a big area of lots of concrete. There's, as opposed to like the Hillman lot, which is its official name, I don't know what we call it. There are trees there. So the consensus from Shade Tree is that this would be a wonderful expansion of the CBD trees. It'd be a way to break up some of the concrete, add to the aesthetics. And, visually, when you're there, just historically, that used to be a field, my mom told me, that was owned by the Board of Ed. And they sold it to the village years ago, decades ago, as my mom would say. So it would be nice to see some green there. And that's the general concept. And Chris went out with Adam. And so I fully support this. I'm very grateful for it. And then at the end of it, even though it's not on the map, if you look at the end, I am hoping with engineering and trees in the same discussion, we can talk about that patch of dirt that no longer has a tree because the wires run under it. Like we could scape it, do something.
All right, that was, okay, let me step back. I met with Adam Brown from the Shade Tree. We met on site. We looked at what he would like to propose and what Shade Tree would propose. And I definitely think we can create tree wells in those two concrete islands. They're about 4 feet in diameter. I just want to check with Declan as to how big a well he would feel most comfortable with for the best viability of a tree. And then, of course, I want to discuss with him what tree species he would recommend, whether it would be an underwire or a taller one. We really don't have any wires in conflict, but I still want to see what he would recommend for a parking lot. For somebody, if he suggests a little bit of wider tree well, I believe we can do that. Our normal parking spaces are quite deep. I would not hesitate to take a foot or 18 inches from each space to give an extra 2 or 3 feet to create a larger tree well, again, to enhance the viability of what we plant. I'm going to probably have to draw this up a little more neater than the sketch that you may have seen with a bunch of X's on it, but I think it's definitely something that, I'm not sure if we can get it implemented this fall with the tree planting program. We're taking bids on that on next Wednesday anyway, so we'll see what we can do. But what I wanted from the council is, I might even prepare for the council's consideration something like a Title 59 ordinance, just so the council can weigh in on the recommendation and suggestion. If it's in your agreeable to you folks, that certainly gives us the guidance to proceed with it.
I love the idea. I wonder if you would consider trenches rather than the circular tree wells that we normally use downtown.
Trenches, I have to be concerned about several things in the parking lot. How the vehicles park, stormwater runoff, and then that evil white stuff known as snow and ice control. I'd like to make a curb tree well just to help provide like a ring or a barrier to keep
Cars away.
salt runoff away from a tree. Salt is very detrimental to trees. That's why if we have a little bit of a ring barrier, it might keep runoff salty water away from the tree, directed to an inlet so it doesn't harm the tree. That's something we have to look at. And again, I want to work with Declan, listen to what his recommendations are, and design accordingly.
Okay. I mean, everyone's mostly in favor of it, right?
Oh.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay. So then can we just briefly discuss the patch of dirt that's driving me
Okay,
crazy?
I'm not quite
So
sure.
in front of Hot Jewelry Box,
On East Ridgewood
on
Avenue.
East Ridge Avenue, like right across from Walgreens, there's a tree well. And the feedback, because Nancy's here, is that there's utility wires that are too close to the surface, and if we plant something there, it's going to interfere with the roots. So it's unplanted, undemonstrated, you know, we have this 2-year thing. Nobody wants to put a tree in there. So because we need to either cover it with brick, or, you know, we need to do something, because it's a patch of dirt, and when I go out and count how many are empty, and I make my teenagers help me with that. They're like, why is that one still empty, Mom? I just think we need to make the decision to scape it over if we can't plant a tree in it.
My recommendation is if we can't plant the tree because of utility conflicts, you have to see how high they are and just put in a concrete sidewalk.
Okay, or brick.
Concrete, I prefer.
Okay.
Why can't we put it in an above-ground pot?
We can, but it's still got the dirt, and then that just promotes the weeds.
I was told, no, we couldn't even put a pot there, because I had asked that a
Is
couple
it,
years ago.
not being exactly familiar with the location, is that because it might be an intersection site obstruction?
It is. It might be there, Lorraine, with the
I
left-hand turn.
think it was more the utilities right underneath, so close to the surface, that the weight of the pot was not.
I'm sure it's electric. There may also be natural gas. I don't know if there's any telco. It all depends on what the markout would indicate.
I mean, our ideal goal was a tree, but it seems that ship has sailed. So now we just have to do something so it's not dirt and a weed fest, which is what it is. And I mean, I think if we escape it, I'm fully support the flower pot that Lorraine's going to donate. And she just found out about it. So you'll let me know, and if you want me to take
We'll take a look at, see what we can do.
Okay.
Again, I was not aware that there's utility conflict. Let me touch base with Declan. We do know that in past planting times, there have been a number of tree wells we had utilities in them.
Okay.
And I think a couple were on North Broad Street.
Yeah, we have them all down and all identified, and Declan's been great, and Nan's department's been great. So we want to finish the CBD, right, and say it's done, and this lone tree well. in
Is
front
this
of
the
Hot-
only
The
dirt
on-
patch?
Yes. That doesn't have a plan. There are ones that are still under the warranty. You know, there's ones that are being addressed that are
Okay.
slightly broken, but this is the only one where it's been stuck.
So we
in
have to
one-
come up with something for this location?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so everybody's supportive of a resolution for next
Yes.
week on this?
Good.
Okay. All right, and lastly, if you would jump to E3, which is the taxi stand parking spaces. So after much internal discussion and a site visit with the police chief, the recommendation from both the police department and engineering is to go to the loading zone to exist 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There is no potential to establish parking in front of the taxi stand. Chris, you want to just speak as to why that is?
Yeah, if you look at the taxi stand now, you'll see like a concrete island set off the sidewalk a little bit. That was deliberately built because we had too many delivery trucks hitting the building. So rather than stationing an officer from the police department there full-time, we made what is known as a concrete policeman, a big, heavy curb. It's worked, but we don't want to park a car there necessarily because they might be struck by the trucks.
Right. So that removes the vehicle parking. The chief is recommending the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because rather than traditional loading where you're offing goods and bringing them to restaurants or stores, he's concerned about that being a pedestrian drop-off for Uber and for Lyft and for taxis, if, you know, to the extent that they exist anymore. So Chief, you want to speak to that part of the recommendation?
It's also where everybody gets dropped off for the train station. So, I mean, that's a very active, you'll see people as late as 1 a.m. getting picked up from the train stuff. Sometimes parking's not an issue, but sometimes if it's a Friday or Saturday night and people are all parking in the legal spots for the bars and the restaurants that are open very late, you'll actually have a good place that people can pull over, offload. There's often luggage involved. It just makes sense to have a spot that's centrally located that can be used for offloading and unloading.
And which is safe.
And yeah, it's much safer off to the side there. It's a good location.
And then with regard to the hours designated to the tenant that we have a lease with, we're going to establish those 2 parking spaces from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. This way, those spaces can be utilized by the businesses in the evening hours when we're busier downtown. All right?
Just so
Yes.
I understand, when you pick up your kid at the train station, are you supposed to park head into the taxi stand, or are you supposed to park parallel in that loading zone?
So head
I
in.
mean, not park, but pull up
Yeah,
and
to pull
wait.
in, you should always park head in. There's really no, parallel could get dangerous because if there's a second person that can come up next to you and things like that. Head in parking always kind of works the best. That being said, we've seen people pull up with trailers that couldn't park head in, and having a loading zone there actually provided them with a spot to, pull in with a large trailer or something, especially when people are leaving, they
And
pack
Chris,
big.
when the signs are re-erected, once the ordinance is in place, you'll be able to have Rich add the times to those poles so that
Yes.
people know when it's
Yeah,
designated.
Our,
Okay.
our sign shop is very creative.
best,
And
yeah.
put everything on it that we need.
Great, thank you.
I just have a question. So I'm confused. Is the loading zone going to be strictly for the tenant leasing the taxi stand? Or it's for anybody?
It's for anybody.
Anybody.
It's for anybody.
The 2 spots are dedicated to the tenant, and as Keith said, from 7 to 5.
Okay.
And the
So-
loading zone will be able to be used to drop off people, to drop off goods to cross the street, or if the tenant needs it, it'll be available to
Okay,
them too.
because I thought they also requested a loading zone, but
No.
not just.
No,
for
I don't
them.
think we can designate it that it just be that, especially
Okay.
because of the uses that the chief has already described.
All right, thank you.
And there was the old idea that maybe we could claw back parking from in front of the building, but the, human traffic respite is.
No, yeah. Okay.
All right? Gentlemen, thank you.
Okay.
And in an
Thank you
effort
very much.
to relieve my Director of Parks and Recreation as soon as possible, Nan, if you'll come up, we'll discuss your 3 items that are before council tonight. So as Nancy walks up, the first item, which is C3, is the follow-through on one of the capital requests from earlier this year, which was funded by the bond ordinance that the village council adopted. And this is for the purchase of a 2024 mini loader, which will be purchased off the Sourcewell contract in the Bergen County Co-op. The vendor is Northeast Arborist Supply of Woodland Park. Total amount is $109,857. Nan, I don't know if you have anything else that you want to comment on this purchase?
The Parks Department are very, very excited about this addition to their fleet. This is a new and upcoming multi-use vehicle, and will be all seasons. So we'll be able to move materials, soil, clay, bricks, logs, trim, leaves, and snow. So we're excited. Thank you for your support.
Anybody want to say no to her?
So this is, you don't have one of these
No.
now. It's amazing because it can sweep snow, it can blow snow, it can plow snow. I'm impressed.
We will be too. Thank you.
And it can do sidewalks, which none of our
Yes.
trucks can do.
Yes.
Okay, so in addition to that, there are 3 requests tonight. One is the purchase of the pavilion structure for Habernickel Park, actually purchasing the pavilion itself. The second is a memorandum regarding the installation and the award of contract for the installer, and the third is with regard to the Veteran Fields lights. So, Nan, you want to take it from there?
So, thank you for your support in this project. It's been a long time coming. This is my third opportunity to share with you this evening. I do want to let you know that I have met both on site and in conference with both the Village Engineering and the Signal Division as a collaborative within both of these projects that are under our jurisdiction. I am most pleased to be able to bring the final structure to you for Habernickel, and after 5 different various locations and site visits on every one, and topography and grading and measuring and distancing and traffic flow and pedestrian use and park users and visibility and neighbor concerns, this is what we've come up with. And I'm really proud and pleased with this selection. I do believe it's the best choice, and it will be beneficial to our residents, park users, and the community at large.
Questions?
It's very handsome, really, a
I'm very
beautiful
proud.
choice.
I'm
So-
so looking forward to adding this to our park inventory for our residents to be able to enjoy.
So-
This is definitely a quality of life for our residents, hands-on, right, for them.
So a few factors that I just want to point out. One, the placement of this, I think, was discussed at length. There was some residential input. I did receive some correspondence from some residents who live in and around the park. I shared this rendition from engineering with them, and I received positive responses from the residents that this image was shared with. So I think there is generally residential support for this location in the park. Secondly, this image was also sent down to the Green Acres program at the NJDEP. I have a email from Nancy Lawrence, who's our representative down at Green Acres, dated Friday, where the NJDEP has signed off on this location, and they're supportive of this project. They did encourage us to solicit the residential feedback. I think we've already achieved that, and again, received what I amount to an endorsement from the residents who vocalized any concerns about the placement. And thirdly, I just want to be clear that the usage of the formal usage of the pavilion will be conducted for all groups through the facilities request process that is set up at the Recreation Department. So if the Boy Scout group or some other community group, I know there has been discussion about Health Barn's accessibility to that, they will be treated like everybody else. This is not part of their lease. This is not part of the area, not even close to the area that they have a lease agreement with the village to utilize the space. Everybody will be treated the same. However, the primary purpose of this is for families to enjoy it on a more casual basis, for it to be able to provide shelter, especially in inclement weather, if you're using the playground area, or if you're using especially if you're using the ball field. The lightning detector system goes off. We have a place for folks in the park to seek shelter. So we're excited about this, and we're hopeful that the council will look favorable tonight on both awarding the contract to the vendor providing the structure and also to the installer.
So I have, my first question is, I'm sorry, but I'm confused. Where is the structure going?
So to the left is the baseball field.
Yes.
To the right, up a little bit, is the playground. The box at the extreme top, if you look right behind you, it might be better, Lorraine.
Are you saying this is where the pavilion is?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. So the top structure, the rectangular structure, is the garden for Health Barn.
So the barn was beyond the garden?
The barn was beyond what this image shows.
Nowhere near where the
No,
barn was?
no.
Okay. But isn't that where there's a field currently?
It's not part of the playing field.
It's not part of the playing field, but it's a grassy area?
It's a grassy area, yes.
And does
It doesn't impact any of our formal programs, right, Nan?
Lorraine, right now, that area that we have, that you're seeing what the pavilion is slated for is really what we call an open space area. It's not a designated field, it's not lined, it's for play. It's for passive recreation. So, you know, if the Boy Scouts want to have a rocket launch, it would be someplace in that area, you know, rather. Yeah. A little bit, yes, a little bit south and east, but yes, it is somewhat near that location.
Right.
And you've gotten, did you send it to like all the residents?
I think the resident that I was dealing with was sharing it with the other
Okay,
folks. Yeah.
so you're comfortable that the
I'm
residents?
very pleasantly pleased that
Okay.
everybody's sort of in
Good.
support of the location.
All right, then I
Okay.
have another question. So the structure itself is about 201,000?
Yes,
Yes.
201, 270,000. 201,270. And then the
Okay.
installation is 215,000.
Okay. Now, does that include the bathroom?
No.
Okay. Because that's, I mean, I'm trying to think, in the capital budget, we budgeted 340,000, is that correct?
Correct.
And that included bathrooms?
No.
Oh, it did not?
No, just the structure
So-
and the installation.
So there was no budgeting for bathrooms?
Correct.
Oh, so is that something that we're thinking about in the future?
2025.
Right.
Okay.
I'll be coming back
And
to
also,
you.
one of the prohibitive things about that, I think initially we had wanted to, or I shouldn't say we wanted to. I think initially we had envisioned this sort of replacing the barn, or at least I did. I don't want to speak for Nancy, but I, in my mind, we were taking a structure down, we were adding a structure to that location. It just sort of made sense. I don't think any of us realized until it was gone how narrow the footprint of the barn was. And when we were talking about putting the pavilion there, it very quickly seemed like it was being shoehorned into that space, which we wanted to avoid. That being said, we also have to worry about sanitary access, which means we have to extend the sewer line regardless of where we put the bathrooms. This is the right location for the pavilion. Based on where we will have sanitary access or where we can add sanitary lines, we may look at a different location for the restrooms.
Oh, okay.
So, and it all has to do with the underground infrastructure, and we need to have a conversation with engineering about that.
Okay.
All right.
All right, and then, so I guess my last question is, we budgeted 340,000, so this is gonna be 416,000. So where is the extra money coming?
There's open capital from the initial Habernickel project,
Additional capital for?
from Habernickel,
From what?
for the development of Habernickel.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
This is
That we
phase,
haven't used?
this
I
is
mean-
phase 3. So remember, the park has had iterations of development. This is official phase 3, right?
I just know that there was capital budget monies that were set aside for other projects at Habernickel that weren't utilized, and this was vetted to me with, through the CFO.
So is there still more left for bathrooms, or no, that will be?
No, for
20?
bathrooms, no.
But for other items?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And keep in mind, we have grant money coming in too for the playground, so there'll be phase 4 if you want to call
Oh.
it that, so.
I got one last question. So what are where the barn was, is that just gonna be like seed planted grass? or-
It
Yes.
was seeded over, and
Yes.
it is grass right now.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
lawn
all grown
area.
in, and there'll be no need to change the footprint of the garden either.
Okay.
Right. And in preparation for this project, we've done some soil testing up there too, so I'm waiting for Matrix to get back to me with what that looks like too. Just
Oh.
precautionary.
That's wonderful, because I know that there was a lot of consternation about moving that whole garden.
Yeah.
Which, you know, has been grown over the last 10 years. And also, just so you know, the bonding for Habernickel, for the purchase of it, we are done with paying off that debt this year.
Okay.
It's good to know. Because same year that Liam was born, so 20-year bond, 20 years old. I just want to say, Nancy, this has been awesome to work with you on, and if anybody from the council hasn't been up to see the space of the barn, you know, I too thought it would be take out, insert in, and when I got up there, it was overwhelming to see the space differently, and it has been such an advantage in the light, because now the barn, the garden's growing better, and it is fully seeded, so it's like a grassy little patch, and it is a little narrow patch. You know, we all were like stunned with how narrow it was. So the whole Parks Committee went up there, we picked in the garden, it was a lovely experience, but you should go up, and I think this is just such a good call, and I know sometimes we, or me, can be difficult in going through options, and I think this is just the best option, and so I'm very grateful for your time, and I think it's going to be great.
All right, moving on to
Let's
the
go.
lighting of Veterans Field.
Again, we've saved the best for last, right? I can tell you that this has been a labor of love, and we have worked with an amazing team of professionals. We've worked with lighting engineers from Land Associates. We've worked with the experts from Musco. We've worked with our signal division, our electrician, our engineering division. This has been a very sophisticated upgrade, but I'm really pleased to bring you the final figures and that approval from Musco in the way that we're looking at it right now. And it does include the option one includes baseball and soccer lighting for those two facilities. So I don't know what else, village manager, we'd like to include
Right, so
other
let
than
me-
my memo.
Yeah, let me just speak to that. So if you look at the bottom portion of the memorandum that Nancy prepared, we had originally budgeted in capital $700,000 to do the ball field. The varsity girls soccer field was not included in the $700,000 design. I'm sorry, varsity
Softball.
girls softball field was not included in the original design. At a fields meeting that both Siobhan and I attended, I think back in the spring, it was discussed about soliciting a quote from Musco to include the girls softball field. We did that. As you can see in option 2, the delta brings the project up to $958. So it's about a $258,000 additional expenditure to light the girls softball field. We are not recommending that at this time. We have talked to Musco and we've talked to our signal department as we do site preparation for this project. Everything will be outfitted in such a way that we can expand the lighting project to the softball fields at some point in the future. Depending on how successfully we are with attaining grants, we're in the process of talking to PSE&G about some of their energy rebates, which we've talked about all along with this project, and also talking to some of the organizations and seeing what their contributions might be. We may do a change order, or we may treat it as an additional project going into '25. But as of tonight, the recommendation of both Director Bigos and myself is to award the initial contract for the $700,000, which was what we discussed at capital budget time.
So are you laying the conduit?
Everything is being prepared, no, not conduit, but everything is being prepared to handle a future expansion of lights on Veterans Field.
So,
And that'll be included in the 700.
Yes.
Yeah.
right, but there's no conduit there for the,
No,
No.
but the lights will be on the exterior of the field, Mayor. So I think it's 2 additional light posts or 4 additional light posts if
For
we do
the-
option 2?
Yeah,
Yeah.
2.
So, but they would be, that conduit would be laid on the exterior of the field, outside of the
We'll
fencing.
need additional lights for that, Mayor.
right,
Poles.
right. And why did we decide against that?
Well, funding.
Because it's another $258,000 to do the conduit plus the pole lights.
So
For the women's softball, that's what we're discussing as option 2.
Right, no, I understand that, I've paused, and I will go along with it, but I paused because we are funding the men's baseball, but not the women's softball.
But there's also soccer, which is mixed gender out in there.
No,
So
I understand, and I know that we're gonna get to this. eventually. What is?
Well, if you want to
And I'll
write a
tell- I'll
check,
tell you this,
I
I
think
don't- I don't-
We're all good with that.
And we can make jokes about it, but it's, again, this is a cause for concern for me.
So can I say two things? One, I can say unequivocally that none of this was based on gender. It was based on the geography of where each field is behind that wall behind me. That's number one. Number two, I think there is a concerted effort amongst the Recreation Department and my office to try to turn over some rocks with regard to grant funding and the rebates to try to expand this project. We're just not there tonight to make that recommendation to you. So in order to move the project forward, sign a contract with Musco, start to get the infrastructure built out to support this new lighting on the field, we're recommending the $700,000 award with a to be continued as to how and when we get the funding prepared to come back to you to expand the project to the girls softball field.
And when might you know about that expansion?
So I spoke to Open Space this evening at the county in light of the fact that I knew you were going to ask me that question.
Shocking.
We should know by mid-October with regard to the Bergen County Open Space Grant, and we should know in September, or we should have a better idea in September where we are with the PSE&G rebates.
And when would this actually start to go in? When does the work start?
I think in the fall, you would start to see infrastructure go into the ground, the electrical panels, some of the work that Signal needs to do. I don't think you'll see lights start to be erected, the new lights on the field in the earliest spring.
Spring.
And
But my request to you is that we have a great deal of permitting to do.
Yes.
In regards to this, and we have to get cooperation from PSE&G, which is probably one of our greatest challenges. We need a new service put in, and that recalls, us, our Quality Electric, who is our electric subcontractor on this project, reaching out to PSE&G, making all of those arrangements. In the meantime, we need to have the final drawings prepared from Land Associates, the electrical drawings done, and none of the professionals at this point will move forward until they have a contract. We have met 3 times on site out of goodwill and good nature on their end. But they want to know that we're serious going forward with this project.
So I'm certainly in favor of going forward, although I share Paul's concerns about equity and just doing the right thing here. So I would encourage you to obviously lean in on PSE&G, lean in on the grants. I know that there was some talk about private money coming from some of the sports groups. We'd love to see if they would close the gap, because while I am gonna, I am supportive of authorizing going forward now, I don't want to hold this up. I would very much love that when we actually do put shovel in ground, we have enough funding secured to do all the fields, including the women's softball field.
Understood.
Yeah,
Can I
I
just ask a
agree.
question?
I am also a little disappointed that we can't get the women's softball field included here, but it looks like you're looking to the future, and I hope you continue to do that.
Yeah, I can tell you if we are looked upon favorably by Bergen County, we will likely have the amount needed between the capital investment that the council decided to make in the spring, plus the grant.
And the ratables.
We just can't make that recommendation to you until
Right.
we know that those other 2 things are in place. So there's a real
wanna move
possibility that
forward.
come November, December, we can come back to you to make this project whole. We're just not in a position to do that now, but we do want to get the work product started outside.
And I echo what Evan said, that I'm not going to hold this up, obviously. I would like to know what the plan is in 2025 in the event that you don't get funding from the county, if it is the absolute intent to include the other $258,000 in the capital budget of 2025.
I believe it's the director's first priority.
We both have female varsity athletes in our families. You know how I stand on this.
So in the event that we don't get county funding, this will
I'm
be
feeling
part of.
optimistic, sir.
I beg your pardon?
I said I'm feeling very optimistic.
I mean, part of the reason we put it together is so you guys could be ready to say yes.
Oh,
And so
listen,
that's-
like I
so-
said, I'm not.
Just say be
I'm not gonna-
prepared.
I'm not gonna hold it up. And Keith, to your comment that absolutely gender never entered into this. If we look back in history, gender never does, and yet women have been left behind for a very, very long time. But it has nothing to do with gender. So if I were to say, you know what? Let's do the women's softball field and not include the men's baseball field.
Okay.
How does anybody feel about that?
Lorraine would do it because it costs less.
I'm just saying it's like, gee, that would certainly raise some eyebrows. So I like I said, I'm not going to hold this up, but I am going to look at this going forward, that this should absolutely be funded no later than the spring of 2025.
So let me just ask a question. When we talked about this for the budget, the 2024, we only talked really about the baseball field, right? It didn't even include the
Well,
soccer.
the baseball and the soccer field.
Oh, it did include the
Right.
soccer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All of the soccer facilities will be lit.
Okay.
And by virtue of doing that, you're essentially lighting the baseball field.
Right.
I think there's one additional pole that gives you full coverage there.
No problem. The
but-
next question is does Bergen County offer this $200,000 grant every year?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
So if we
give or take.
get some or all of it this year, we could also apply next year
Right.
towards the softball.
Phase 2, right.
I'm
if
hopeful
needed.
if this goes well with Bergen County, that before the end of the year, we'll be able to come back with a recommendation to light the varsity girls softball field. I can't make that guarantee to you tonight.
I understand.
But that is the goal.
Okay.
And if you want to, next year, as part of capital, to light the secondary girls softball field closer to Linwood Avenue, that may be a discussion for capital if you want to take it, another field in.
That can't may be a discussion for capital. That must be a discussion for capital. That is the girls' varsity softball home field that has played, and that team has a historic run at that field, and so this is a team that requires equal treatment with the boys' varsity team.
I think we're all in agreement. It either gets done this year with found money, or it gets done next year with budgeted money.
That's all I'm
One of the
saying.
two. Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Agreed. Thank you.
Let's go.
All right, thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Okay, circling back to C1, we have a few items here from the IT department. The first is to replace computer equipment for the Village of Ridgewood and Ridgewood Water, which includes the GIS department at Ridgewood Water. This would allow for the latest upgrades to the Microsoft system in order to remain compliant with all of our security policies that are in place through the Bergen JIF. This is an expenditure not to exceed $137,658.24, and the budget accounts, the capital accounts rather, are listed at the bottom of the resolution. Any objections?
All good.
Okay, the next is a resolution from IT to replace the Toughbook laptops that are used by the police department that have either been rendered unusable, past their useful life, or have become obsolete. Not to exceed is $28,318.75. And again, the capital budget accounts are listed in the last paragraph of the resolution.
Everybody good? Okay. Let's go.
Okay, we're jumping to number 7. This is the acceptance of a $75,000 grant to the Ridgewood Department coming through the American Rescue Plan, specifically the firefighter grant program. Need a resolution to accept this to be in compliance with the grant.
Everybody good?
Okay. Congratulations to Chief Judge on his advocacy for securing the grant. The next item is number 10, which is the revised proposal for the Phase 2 archaeological survey at the Shedler property. We have gone through many renditions of this proposal with Richard A. Grubb Associates. This plan needed to be submitted and approved by the State Historic Preservation Office. We received correspondence from Vincent Maresca, who's our point of contact on archaeological issues down at SHPO. He has approved this scope of work. The total not to exceed is $161,050. This is for the Phase 2 archaeological, which is required by SHPO. And I just want to make a point that regardless of what the long-term plan is or becomes on the Shedler property, this Phase 2 archaeological needs to be completed regardless of what the proposal is today versus what it might be in the future, especially in light of the matrix presentation this evening. So I just wanted to point that out, and this would be coming from that same bond ordinance that I discussed with Councilmember Reynolds earlier.
Okay, and we have enough money.
We do.
Okay.
Okay?
And this can be done simultaneously?
It can.
with-
This is a long process. We're probably not going to know to have a full report on the Phase 2 archaeological. I would venture to say January at the earliest. There's an 8 to 12 week dig, there's an 8 to 12 week analysis, and then there's an 8 to 12 week preparation of the report. So this is going to take some time, which is why I'd like to get this underway. And if it's happening simultaneous with any remediation that needs to be done at the property, we can accommodate that. Okay?
So, but I want to say something here because, when the public watches this, the total cost for the Phase 2 archaeological dig is $161,050. So one of the things that has always been the struggle with Shedler is that by declaring the house historic, we were eligible for historical grants, but then the due diligence of maintaining this is also quite expensive. I also want to say that, to Keith's point, when I took my seat, the things that were supposed to be done with the declaration hadn't been done, so I'm proud of this council for finally doing this and taking the steps. And it's a lot of money, and we have the $2.6 million house that still doesn't have any future intended use. And now we're going to spend this, so we're compliant with SHPO, but had we not done this, it should have been done when the house was declared. It should have been done a long time ago. So it's sort of cleaning it up. But I do feel like, because the cost of the project has been so sensitive, that I just want to make sure the public understands that the second and final, hopefully final, archaeological dig is $161,000.
I am kind of shocked at the cost, but I look forward to seeing these artifacts. I'm very curious. What is it?
It's just frustrating as there was never any artifacts found conducive with the Revolutionary War. We have to do it, so we're going to do it, but it does feel like we're just throwing good money after bad because of some poor planning.
As I often do, I echo Evan's comments. Let's go.
Okay, item 11 is a shared services agreement with the Borough of Fairlawn for our styrofoam densifier. So we'll add them to our roster of municipalities we work with to utilize that machinery.
Let's go.
Okay, item D2 is the certificate of occupancy ordinance, which has been recommended by John Barry, our village planner, and has the endorsement of our construction official, Anthony Merlino. I don't know, Matt, if you want to add anything. I know you worked with John on this ordinance.
We did, and we did it through the ordinance committee group, and in an effort, particularly of this council, to try and make sure that we streamlined as best we could the process for businesses opening up and for keeping the viability to our central business district. The first addition here is to Chapter 190, Section 97, which lists a number of exceptions to needing a certificate of occupancy. And one of the things that we did not exempt over the years was a change of tenancy. There are a few towns left that still require a CO, which is an application before a board, before the planning board, when there is a change of tenancy. And if there are no changes to the facade or the building itself, and it's just a tenancy change and it's a permitted use that's coming in, this change of tenancy is not going to require a certificate of occupancy anymore. It's going to be able to get opened up and running as quickly as they can get the lease signed. The second half of this deals with another exemption, which is to Section 190.37. And again, this also talks about exemptions from site plan approval. And this, after more consideration about how best to do this, it was considered that the alterations to the facade, roof, entrance, and exit doors, windows, or other exterior components of an existing building, which alterations do not change the location or extent of the walls of the building, will not need site plan approval. Obviously, this does not apply to any buildings that are in historic districts or are designated as historic, because it's still going to need, if certain conditions are met, it still might need review by the HPC, but this is for exemption from site plan. And again, this is an effort to try and allow changes to occur a lot more smoothly, quickly, and properly, as long as it permitted uses and meets the criteria of the zone.
I just want to say that I'm very pleased that the Working Ordinance Group has come up with this, because for many decades, Ridgewood has been a central business district that many people wouldn't come to, because there were so many regulations that delayed the opening of a new business. And this ordinance does not take away any of the safeguards of that the village needs to ensure that a business is opened the right way with all the safety requirements that we need. It just makes it go faster, which at the end of the day, that's what our central business district needs. And I'm so pleased to see that this is moving forward.
Okay. All right, the next item under operations is item E1. I'm going to turn that over to Heather to present the 2025 Village Council meeting dates.
Okay, so we have a couple of months where we do have to change the dates. So January 25, our reorganization meeting, we're recommending be on January 6th, which is a Monday. 2 years prior, in 23, obviously, was our first reorganization meeting in January, and we tried to do the reorganization meeting along with a work session. And it really just became really late and really long. So the recommendation is to make the reorganization meeting on the 6th, and then our public work session on the 8th. Obviously, the first Wednesday of the month is the 1st, so we wouldn't meet then. And then in February, we do need to change the public meeting to the Monday because the 12th is a holiday. And then in addition, in October 1st is the first Wednesday of the month, and that's the first night of Yom Kippur. So we are recommending, again, changing it to the Monday, and this is for a work session, Monday, September 29th. I'm also requesting that the Village Council chat dates be March 22nd, May 3rd, and October 4th, and that the Coffee with the Council date is September 6th, which is traditionally the Saturday after Labor Day. So, you know, we did have 3 times that we did council chat this year, and it looks like, you know, people did attend, and so as long as the council members are willing to commit to be there, we certainly will hold them again. And this helps us, the reason why we do this at this point is basically for the calendar, so we can get that up and going. So as long as everyone's okay with those change in dates, we'll move forward with them.
I assume you checked Passover dates?
Yeah, it doesn't conflict at all, yes.
Everybody good? Let's go.
Okay, that's what we'll do.
Okay, the next issue is the authorization of the settlement agreement with OnQ, which was discussed prior in closed session. We're good with a resolution for that for next week. We talked about the taxi stand. Next is declaration of surplus equipment from IT. This is a resolution to dispose of equipment from the IT department rendered unusable, past its life, or obsolete. There is an extensive list, 2 pages worth of those items, and Dylan is seeking a resolution for next week. Next is a declaration of surplus property request from Sean Hamlin, our recycling coordinator, supervisor of solid waste. This is to declare the surplus truck SW-273 as surplus property. The vehicle has reached the point that additional repairs are not worth the overall value, and the vehicle has major engine issues, multiple oil leaks, and a rusted frame, excuse me. So he's looking to declare that surplus.
Well, good.
And finally, we're looking for an endorsement for a community development block grant application for 130 Prospect Street. This is a request from Share Inc., and this would allow for the labor, materials, and cleanup of masonry debris for the removal and replacement of the front patio. The application amount for endorsement is $11,600.
Good.
And that concludes my portion of the agenda, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Keith. And let's go back to public comment.
Hey, Elaine Divablis Liebenson, 41 Clinton Avenue. Our daughter goes back to school on Friday to college. Steve and I are giving you our night. This is how important this is to us. And I'm going to cry, and I'm sorry. I'm going to beg you to shift your thinking on Clinton Avenue. The DOT has given you a gift. They have told you there's this amazing ordinance exactly for the purpose of Clinton Avenue, that it is Clinton Avenue. It allows for through traffic restriction for ingress and egress to school. That accomplishes discouraging parents from driving their kids to school and creating safer conditions for kids to walk. This is an amazing gift. It is not an illegal ordinance. At most, we're talking about a potential conflict. You all have come tonight to the assumption the AG is going to tell you it is illegal. It is a conflict. You can advocate, and that would be amazing. I'll help you draft the letter. You can advocate to the Attorney General. You can say, the Commissioner of the Department of Transportation has told us this statute applies right here for this very purpose. I am here for you. I would support the village. I will take my own pen out and help Mr. Rogers. You can advocate for it. If you go to the AG and you ask for a thumbs up, thumbs down, is there a rule that doesn't allow for distinguishing classes? You know what they're going to tell you? Oh yeah, there's a rule. If you explain and you provide context and you say the Department of Transportation has this perfect statute on point that protects our kids and discourages parents from driving, that is a gift. So I'm going to beg you. Here's what's going to happen, and others have said, and I'm going to say it again. Cars are going to stop at the stop sign at the top of Clinton while kids bail out. They're going to bail on the east side because parents want to avoid the red zone at Ridge. The red zone at Ridge tried to implement a second lane. They had to discontinue it because no one would follow the rules. At Maltby Avenue, Ridge parents got kicked off because no one would follow the rules. I can tell you what the top of Clinton is going to look like. And I'm going to beg you to rethink it and make the argument to the Attorney General if that's what you have to do. An alternative is a one-way restriction. Close the east side. You've taken care of multiple birds with that one stone. Just like in the Willard District, close the east side of Clinton Avenue and you still have one side going through. That means there's no sidewalk, but now my middle schooler can get in and out to George Washington Middle School, right, and have a place to walk. And you've given Daniel a place to walk as well, and everybody on the east side, because right now, if you open this street, there is no way to walk up Clinton Avenue. No one can walk to Ridge from Clinton Avenue on the east side. My daughter from GW asked me, Mom, how should I walk home? I have no idea. Traffic's going to be going like this. It's going to be bonkers. Again, Ridge parents have gotten kicked off of Maltby. I'm going to beg you to rethink this and make the pitch to the Attorney General. There's no rush. There is no rush. Nobody is suing you over this. It's never happened. There's no rush. Cool it, leave it, and if the AG comes in and says there's no way we can live with this, then one way is the way to go. Close that one side of the street for the same hours, just like we do at Willard. Thank you all. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness.
Thank you, Elaine. Anyone else from the audience? Let's go to our hybrid access. Susan, you're up. Susan, you're still on mute.
Hi.
There you
Hi,
go.
can you hear me now?
We can.
All right, hi. Susan Rand, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. Just to piggyback off of what Elena just said, I do believe Clinton should be one way. If all else, because my son did go to Ridge School at the RISE program, and I know that area. I used to volunteer also at the Red program, Red Zone, and it is really
Susan,
a
could you speak a
free-for-all.
little more clearly? We're having a little trouble understanding you. Perhaps put the
Hold on, let me
phone
take
closer
you
to your
off.
mouth.
Let me take you off Bluetooth. Hold on. Hi, can you hear me better now?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay, yes, hi. And so I do believe the red zone at Ridge is exceptionally difficult. I used to volunteer there. So I would hope that there is some compromises to be found for that. And that was just an offshoot from what Elena just said, but I do want to go through my other points. I want to begin by thanking Siobhan for her efforts to include pullover properly and access Ridgewood. I also want to thank the Ridgewood Police for addressing for the access to the STEPS program. Yes, my son attends STEPS, and that was something that needed to be done. I want to follow up on Jackie Holmes' comments about the burn, which is it going to be replaced with a new burn or a barrier?
Susan, we're losing you again.
Can you hear me now?
Much better.
Okay, so the burn right now is vital. It helps protect us it's a safety concern for accidents. It also helps reduce noise and pollution from the highway. When an estimate is sent out to remove the burn, will it also include getting an estimate to establish a new burn or put up a barrier wall? That question is for Keith. The next is, most of these questions are for Keith. The next is West Saddle River Road. It is absolutely necessary to have West Saddle River Road repaved before school begins, way before Monroe. And as Keith mentioned, whoever is in and whoever is out is out. If West Saddle River Road is repaved after Monroe, after August, in September, where are schools' children supposed to go? There is only one main artery to all those dead-end streets. The buses use it, the transportation. How are parents going to get their kids to school? And is Ridgewood Village Hall going to pay for families to stay in hotels because they have no other way of accessing their kids to school? I mean, I just can't believe that. All right, as to follow up for the Village Council member Reynolds' comments on Kingsbridge Lane, I was waiting for the village engineer to discuss the redesign of the footbridge as well as the timeline for its completion. Nothing was discussed. Can Keith elaborate on what is the changes to the footbridge and what is the timeline for its completion? And as to follow up for the mayor's comments about the girls' softball field. My daughter played softball. Yes, the girls' softball field is an afterthought in comparison to the boys. And yes, it is vital to put in all fairness, lights there because it is dismal, the girls' softball field. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Cynthia, you're up. You're still on mute, Cynthia.
Okay, well, I only just saw the unmute button. Thank you. Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. I just wanted to make a few comments based on, some of the items that we discussed tonight. First and foremost, when we talk about Shedler, Shedler was purchased for passive and active recreation, not just a giant sports field. So to correct one or more council persons talking about the field, it was for the East Side residents for passive and active recreation, not a giant sports field. So let's get that straight, okay? I don't want to hear this again, and I don't want any gaslighting or whatever historious revision nonsense that is continues to go on. That needs to stop. Passive and active recreation. Right now, it is a giant field with a house, and there is very little passive recreation. If I look at the plan, which is not done to scale, I don't even see a walking path. So let's be clear on that. As for cutting down and justifying, invasive trees, then we would do that throughout the entire village, right? This is a ridiculous justification. I believe Ellie Gruber has asked you numerous times how many trees, and the last count I heard wasn't that far off from Ms. Reynolds, which was, she said 280, it's 220. That was my last count. The fact that you are planning to plant new growth and new trees and little bushes between the house and the field, that's wonderful. However, that won't soak up the amount of water that ends up on that property during a large rainstorm. So let's be clear on that, because I don't think you're over here looking at the property after it's rained. Okay, so when you get that number, whoever it is, Shaban or anyone else, you can provide it to Ellie and to the rest of the residents who have asked numerous times about that. As for the, archaeological survey, that's wonderful. Yes, it sounds expensive. Obviously, that's not something you can blame on the residents. That's being mandated by SHPO and the NJDEP. I have not heard anything on the wetlands assessment that we were paying over $10,000 for to Suburban Engineering. And so those are a few questions that I have that are still outstanding in terms of, what's happening at Shedler and the timeline. And that's really all I had to say. So thank you very much. Oh, and I do have one more thing. I do want to, my heart goes out to the woman who spoke about Clinton Street and her child and the safety. And let's not say we care and that Ridgewood cares. We have to show. So it's walking the talk, actions speak louder than words. And we need to connect with all of these people, all of the residents, to let them know that we actually understand where they're coming from. And, we don't have that tone deaf, we hear you, we do care, but we're, not really showing you how we care. Let's just make sure we walk the talk. That's where the rubber hits the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia. Rurik, you're up.
Yeah, Rurik, Holiday 50, 1 Franklin Avenue in Ridgewood. Regretfully, I joined the meeting late. Just as Keith had mentioned, if I understood him correctly, that the berm could be torn down. Well, if my understanding is correct, then I tell you, as far as Rurik Halib is concerned, Christmas is in August. I mean, I have been fighting the berm for years and years and years. It is a horrible, horrible, horrible thing that the village, the previous administration had done. It's a slap in the face for the neighborhood. And that is fantastic news. Now, along with tearing down the berm, you should get from under the yoke of SHPO. Somehow find money to pay them off, and then along with tearing down the berm, tear down the stupid house. The house is ridiculous. I mean, it's what a terrible, terrible waste. It's time for you people to start looking at Shedler 2.0, a plan that future generations would look back and be proud of what you had done. including, yes, a full-size field. We need a full-size field as quickly as we can. Now, one of the commenters talked about passive and active. Yes, the active would be the full-size field. The passive could be what the Conservancy had suggested about 8 years ago, of putting together an arboretum of native trees that people can come and get educated on what to do. There are so many good things that you guys could do. So I urge you, think of Shedler 2.0. Now, as far as the water wells, that's a red herring, and I'm fed up with listening about water wells being poisoned. If you have a water well, you're being ridiculous by depending on a water well in Ridgewood for water to drink. If I had a water well, I would talk to Bob Rooney, I would talk to Rich Calby about getting together and getting hooked up to the Ridgewood water. 50 years ago, when we moved into Ridgewood, we did not have sewers. And you know something? The village connected us to the sewers, and the cost to us was minimal. Okay? So just get it done. And frankly, Keith, I think you should go to the County Board of Health and require people to connect to Ridgewood water. Lastly, the trees, another red herring. I mean, these are all third, fourth growth trees. You know, I mean, when parks get developed, parks get retreed. I mean, there's nothing big deal about cutting trees. And this idea, oh my God, you can't cut down a tree. So, in summary, think of Shedler 2.0, and I'll be writing it up, because tearing down the berm, tearing down the house, and converting the park into something we could be proud of for generations would really reflect so well on you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rurik. Leo, you're up.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, good evening. Leo Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. Hi, I just want to just pose one or two questions on West Side River Road. Just hoping that can be really completed soon. It's really difficult to drive on, and we've seen most of Ridgewood has been repaved, and we're just waiting for that to happen. I've also got another question in regard to the footbridge. I've seen some people out here in May or June, but nothing seems to have happened. Just waiting on, now I'm hearing there's some redesign of the bridge going to happen. Do we know what type of bridge they're going to redesign it to? Be nice to know, but obviously I just want that bridge repaired or fixed. It's been several years now, so if we can get that done. In relation to the previous caller on Shedler, I mean, the people who actually live here on the east side of Ridgewood want an active and passive park. Right now it's Shedler 0.01. It's not even Shedler 1.0 because we don't have anything on it so far. So he's talking about Shedler 2.0. Let's do what was originally asked for, planned for, and agreed to by all the community here on this side.
Leo, if you could speak a little more clearly or closer to the phone, we can't quite understand everything you're saying.
Oh, sorry. Just on Shedler, some caller was making the point of Shedler 2.0. It's not even Shedler 1.0. It's Shedler 0.01. There's still nothing to do there, and for the last 10 years there's been nothing to do there. Can we just have what we asked for? Small soccer pitch with a walkway and parks for the kids. That's really what we want. This endless delay, and now they're talking 2.0. Let's just get something done on it. That's really the points that I want to make tonight. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Leo. And with that, I'm going to close public comment. Does anyone wish to respond to any of the commenters?
I do. First, with regard to both Susan and Leo, with regard to West Saddle River Road, as I said earlier in the meeting, our contractor has not mobilized to pave streets. We are still in the process of doing concrete work. We don't have a schedule for paving because, quite frankly, with the unpredictability of the weather, it's impacted the sidewalk and the curb projects, and those need to be done prior to us paving. So there is a possibility that it will go into the school year. I'm not going to deny that. If it is, obviously, the engineering department will schedule the paving around people getting access to leave their homes, both for work and for school. This is not the engineering department's first rodeo with doing paving jobs. Obviously, West Saddle River is unique because there is only one way in and one way out, but that has already started to be planned for by the engineering department. With regard to Leo's comments on the footbridge, I did not say that the design of the repairs of the footbridge were being changed. I said that Chris Rudishauser, our village engineer, was discussing with the bridge engineer the possibility of modifying the bid specifications, because obviously we did have two bidders who were outside of the budget and one who failed to properly submit the paperwork with regard to their bonding. So we're trying to shore that up so we don't have that instance occur again. With regard to Miss O'Keefe, obviously, if the berm is removed and a park is developed at the Shedler property, the engineers will need to make a determination as to what best buffers the highway from the park area. This is not the only park along Route 17 or other major highways throughout New Jersey. I know sometimes we like to think that we're unique in Ridgewood, but in fact, if you drive around, we're not. And we will be talking to our consulting engineer and our Ridgewood, our village engineering department about what the best design would be. I will say that if the berm is removed, we are likely going to have to go back and revisit the plan for the park because it's going to change the layout and design of what exists today. Now, how dramatic that needs to be, we are very much in the infancy of dealing with this remediation process. As a matter of fact, I don't even think we're into the remediation process yet because, as you heard tonight, we don't know what the remediation is going to be on the balance of the property. But I will tell you, this is a consequence of this DEP action that was taken. Granted, we're here to fix the sins of the past. And this fill was brought here. It was done under a prior administration. We now need to correct these DEP exceedances, and I have every faith and confidence in Matrix New World Engineering. They have been nothing but professional. They have been nothing but forthright with myself and with the village council, now at 2 meetings. And we are going to follow their directives and the DEP's directives, and how that changes the topography and the design at what happens at Shedler, that's an open question right now that we're going to need to answer as we plug through this process. With regard to the wetlands delineation, I did email Suburban Engineering earlier this week to get a status on that. I do not have the report as of yet. There is some DEP back and forth that Village Engineering has to do with regard to the wetlands delineation study. We actually have to pay a permit fee. So that process is underway, and then we'll have the final report from Suburban Engineering, and that will be shared with the council and with the public. With regard to Clinton Avenue, to Ms. O'Keefe, I will tell you that I do resent any implication that there is a lack of empathy for the family on Clinton Avenue that was here tonight. I can tell you that there have been multiple communications trying to abate some of those issues. As Mr. Rogers indicated, there's litigation there, so I can't speak more than that. But I will tell you this, being empathetic and trying to accommodate folks when they have a challenge is something that we do every day. In a lot of ways, we go out of our way. But what we can't have is a police chief not following the chief law enforcement officer in the state of New Jersey, who is the Attorney General, and having our police chief not follow his or her directives. The chief, like every other police officer in New Jersey, is now licensed, like a doctor, like an attorney, like a teacher, okay? He's a licensed professional in the state of New Jersey now. He has always had an obligation as a police officer and now as our police chief to follow the Attorney General's guidelines, and he needs to continue to do that, and I will back him each and every day in that endeavor, which is why we're asking for a clear direction from the AG as to this issue on Clinton Avenue. But to interpret getting proper legal advice from the chief law enforcement agency in the state, interpreting that as having a lack of empathy, we're not caring about this family, I resent that.
Yeah, Keith, and that was actually where I was going as well. And to my friend Cynthia, I really thought that was unfair. To Keith's point, we can't grant the relief that's being asked because we have a police chief that is telling us it would violate the law to do so. We have counsel telling us that the ordinance is not enforceable as it's currently written. While I want to help the family and we all want to do the right thing, we all took an oath when we took this job not to break the law, essentially. So we're going to continue to look at the issue. We're going to continue to work with the residents. I applaud Lorraine. I know you were involved, Paul, for numerous meetings with the Clinton, with the Clinton Avenue neighbors. But to say somehow that we don't care is not. I just don't think it's appropriate. I don't think it's right, and I don't think it's fair. Also, Cynthia, I do take disagreement with factual assertions around when the Shedler Field was bought. I know Paul has read the minutes from back in 2005 when
Thanks,
Mayor
Evan.
when Mayor Fund, sitting at this dais, I think probably that same exact seat, got up and said explicitly, very clearly, with no ambiguity, that property was being bought for the purpose of a 90-foot baseball diamond, a full-size field. There really is no doubt on this. And while, Cynthia, there are lots of things that reasonable people can disagree with when it comes to Shedler, rewriting history is not one of them. And I want to be very clear, this property was always meant to be a full-size field, and that's one of the reasons why I support it, and I really don't think it's fair to try to change history or confuse folks who don't know the facts as well as people like yourself and people like the people on this dais.
I'd also like to add a couple things. So in the statement about Shedler, I want to echo what Evan said, but there was a statement that Shedler was purchased for the east side of Ridgewood, and nothing could be further from the truth. Shedler was purchased for the community with community dollars, with a dedicated tax that this entire council and the whole entire community pays for. It was never, none of our parks are earmarked for a specific area, and beyond that, we took money from Bergen County.
In
So
fairness,
Shedler-
that all the taxpayers of Bergen County helped pay for the
Totally.
purchase
So
of that
Shedler
property.
was not purchased for the east side residents of the Shedler neighborhood. It was purchased for the community. And again, every plan has included passive and active recreation. And I'll do you one better. The current plan does have a walking path, and we can't get any more passive than the house. It's at this point dormant, and that accounts for a lot of land. So the balance of passive and active is in the plan. I understand and hear people that they disagree with the field, but we do have a walking path, we do have a playground, we have a rain garden, and we have passive elements in the existing plan. With respect to invasive trees, this council is taking the approach to trees very aggressively. Both Pam and Lorraine have asked for the new ordinance that's forthcoming regarding trees to detail and delineate our approach to invasives, and they are part of our tree management and our canopy. So it's not a Shedler issue, it's more of how we're dealing with it. With respect to access, I too took that personally. I don't want to talk about Clinton. I want to talk about the good work that this council has done for families like mine. I think for a long time, part of my platform was to incorporate and layer the access community in to the greater community, and we've done many things. The first access dinner that I had, our two Clinton Avenue negotiators, Paul and Lorraine, showed up. They've participated with all the families. Everyone at this council has been inclusive and welcoming to every idea that I've presented from our access community, and I think that that is very important for this council to hear, the public to hear, and for people who are looking at Ridgewood know that a disproportionate amount of our school board budget and public funding goes to special needs. So we are walking the walk and we are talking the talk, and I think that outside of Clinton, I just want to say thank you to this council for every idea that we've ever had, whether it's from Downs to the logo to the inclusivity dinners. You guys have all come from a place of yes. And I really just wanted to end that on that positive thank you note to this council for actually walking the walk.
And in full disclosure, at the work session in September, there is an inquiry from the Bergen County Historical Society about potentially using the Shedler House. So that will be something that we will be talking about after Labor Day.
Great. Anybody else? Let's call it a night.
Oh,
I
exactly.
have a closed session resolution. Be it resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on August 7, 2024, at 7:30 PM or soon thereafter, as a matter on the agenda can be reached. And the said closed session will be held in the caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. Be further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session limited to legal matters to include Clinton Avenue lawsuit. This matter is allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec. Be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matters have been deemed completed by resolution of the Village Council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.